wasn't my doing. And what does Jesus think about her tentative plan to retire from the order in a couple of years when she's 86 and head home to Colorado, I ask. We haven't discussed it yet, she says.
That was Linda Presley. That's all for this edition of the programme. I'm Pascal Harter. The producer was Polly Hope. We'll be back again next weekend with fresh stories of the real lives behind the news headlines here on the BBC World Service.
That was the BBC programme from our own correspondent. I'm Saroja Coelho. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio, and we are live downtown on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. And it's going to be a pretty decent day in Winnipeg. It is supposed to clear up for us. This morning, we've got some fog and some mist. It's 12 degrees, and we're heading for a high of 23 degrees in the city. Thanks for joining us. We're on air with your morning show till 8:37 AM on your Monday, June the 3rd. Let's say good morning to Chloe Friesen. Chloe's directing the show this morning. Hi, Chloe. Chloe will also be on the air with us, covering the commute. And good morning, Abby Adeyemi. Abby's behind the controls, our technical producer on the program. Abby covers weather on the show. And also behind the glass this morning, good morning to Brad Lillies and to Kevin Nepotebo, new on the team this morning. Hi, Kevin. Welcome to the early hours. All right, let's get into what's going on in the news this morning. Lots has been developing through the weekend. Here from our newsroom is Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, downtown Winnipeg was filled with sound and color yesterday. More than 6,000 people flooding the streets for the biggest Pride Winnipeg parade yet. The parade was blockaded briefly by a group of protesters. In the end, the two sides agreeing to hold regular meetings. We'll hear what went on there. Also, the trial of Jeremy Skibitsky resumes today. It is expected to hear from an expert who assessed the mental state of mind of the admitted Winnipeg serial killer. That's coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, I mentioned that we'll have a high of 23 today. I should mention we do still have a 30% chance of a little bit of drizzle this morning, so we'll see what happens with that. But then a mix of sun and cloud later, and quite a spread of temperature across the province here at 2 minutes to 6. 0 in Dooley Lake. Port Dooley, it's always like the coldest spot in the province. It is again this morning. And Sprague is sitting at 15 degrees in southern Manitoba. There's also rain falling in Lynn Lake. And as I mentioned, there's fog being reported not only in Winnipeg, but in Brandon this morning as well. Well, in the first hour of the show, we're going to talk about the Great Resignation. It's the second conversation on the show around this phenomenon, but it is seriously impacting offices. So we're going to hear more about that. The Great Exhaustion. It's what followed or maybe precedes the Great Resignation, but lots of different trends in the office. So stay tuned for that and more. World Report, though, first.
On Cue with Tom Power.
Our show is not typically the place to get the news until now. Huey Lewis will be here to talk about his new musical based on the music of his band, Huey Lewis and the News, touring Europe when he was 16, and the devastation of losing his hearing. That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Mexico has a new president-elect, and for the first time, it is a woman. Her name is Claudia Sheinbaum. She is a climate scientist and the former mayor of Mexico City, and she won the election last night by a significant margin, at least 58% of the vote. Freelance reporter David Agrin has been following the results from Mexico City. And David, what is the reaction to Sheinbaum's win this morning?
Mexicans poured into central Mexico City, waving flags, honking horns. They're very, very excited with their choice. Polls throughout the campaign showed that Claudia Sheinbaum was going to win by a landslide, and she did. She's going to claim roughly a 30-point victory. She's going to take both houses of Congress with mega majorities, which could allow her the possibility to change Mexico's constitution without negotiating with any of the opposition parties. The candidate of outgoing President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, who led a popular and populist government for the last 5.5 years in Mexico City, People liked Lopez Obrador, and Scheinbaum promised to continue his project, and it was to the point where she really didn't put forward much of a project of her own. There were only very minor tweaks on it, so people approved of Lopez Obrador, and that transferred to Scheinbaum. It just remains to be seen how much of her own program gets done and how much of it is a continuation of Lopez Obrador.
What are the main challenges ahead for her?
Well, security. There were 32 candidates killed in this electoral cycle, candidates and potential candidates. This is organized crime, drug cartels, which are disputing territories. And the theory is that a lot of times they're not necessarily moving a lot of drugs, so they're running things such as extortion rackets. What they want to do is control local governments, and that gives them control of the police. They can steer public contracts in their way. Control of the treasury. So that's going to be a big challenge.
All right. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you very much.
Freelance reporter David Agran reporting from Mexico City. In India,
we have created a world record of 642 million proud Indian voters.
Chief Election Commissioner Rajiv Kumar is calling the country's general election a historic moment in India's history. It is the largest election ever held in the world.
This is 1.5 times of the voters of all G7 countries, US, UK, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Canada, all put together. And it is 2.5 times of the voters of 27 countries in the EU. That has been the incredible power of the voters of India.
Exit polls suggest Prime Minister Narendra Modi will retain his position and win a third term. Modi's BJP leads the National Democratic Alliance. They are likely to win a 2/3 majority. Modi has faced criticism over the country's rising unemployment and attacks against religious minorities, particularly Muslims. Hunter Biden will be in court today for the start of his federal trial for criminal gun charges. The son of U.S. President Joe Biden is the first child of a sitting American president to be put on trial. It is an untimely distraction for the president. He is trying to focus on his re-election campaign. We get the latest from CBC's Katie Simpson in Washington.
Mr. President, are you preparing for the debates at all?
Any response to Bibi, Mr. President?
Under a sunny sky in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, Hunter Biden joined his father, President Joe Biden, Saturday morning for a bike ride near the ocean. An apparent moment of calm before the younger Biden's criminal trial begins. A case that is expected to reveal deeply personal and embarrassing family details that could hurt Joe Biden's re-election campaign. Jury selection starts today. Hunter Biden is accused of illegally buying and possessing a gun at a time when he was addicted to drugs. Prosecutors plan on calling Hunter Biden's former romantic partners as witnesses to examine a dark period of his life while in the throes of addiction, with Joe Biden's political opponents ready to pounce on anything that could be used against the president in the upcoming election.
Absolutely. And I think the president himself will respect the verdict. Much as, it is painful, I'm sure, to see one of your children on trial.
Democrats, including Congressman Adam Schiff, are urging Joe Biden to accept the outcome no matter what, in the hopes of maintaining public confidence in the justice system, especially in the wake of Donald Trump's attacks following his guilty verdict last week. If Hunter Biden is found guilty, he could face 25 years in prison. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
The trial of an admitted serial killer resumes today in Winnipeg. Jeremy Skibicki's mental state is expected to be the focus. The 37-year-old has pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder in the deaths of 4 Indigenous women in 2022. Crown prosecutors say the killings were racially motivated, and Skibicki preyed on vulnerable victims. His lawyers admit he killed the women, but they argue he should be found not criminally responsible because of mental illness. A BC woman is calling out Canada's largest advocacy group for seniors. She says CARP, or the Canadian Association of Retired Persons, has been teaming up with Big Tobacco and is selling access to its members. Erica Johnson has this Go Public investigation.
Ellen Gould of Powell River, BC, recently got an email from CARP, the Canadian Association of Retired Persons, inviting her to be part of a focus group on vaping. She thought it was advocating for the health of seniors.
And it turned out Au contraire, it wasn't.
She learned the focus group was sponsored by Rothmans, Benson & Hedges, a big tobacco company that now sells vaping products.
I was just completely shocked that CARP would do this.
Gould, who happens to be a public policy researcher, has looked into vaping products, knows they're highly addictive and contain toxic chemicals. Rothmans has launched a campaign, Unsmoke Canada, an effort to get government to change the Tobacco Act so vaping products aren't included. Robert Schwartz is executive director of the Ontario Tobacco Research Institute. He says the vast majority of people who use e-cigarettes to try to stop smoking are unsuccessful.
They either return to being exclusive cigarette smokers or they become dual users of both e-cigarettes and cigarettes, and that's even worse.
Rothman says its research with CARP members is legal, appropriate, and essential. CARP declined an interview request. The president said Rothman's approached his organization, and CARP thought the focus group questions were interesting. He declined to say how much money was involved. Ellen Gould has canceled her membership in CARP, saying the group can't advocate for older adults, then get in bed with big tobacco. Erica Johnson, CBC News, Vancouver.
The Edmonton Oilers are going to the Stanley Cup final. They clinched their spot by beating the Dallas Stars 2-1 last night. It has been a couple of years since a Canadian team made it to the NHL final. Even longer since one brought Lord Stanley's Cup north. And as Sam Sampson tells us, fans in Edmonton are very, very excited.
As the last seconds of the game wound down, the crowd held nothing back.
We are so happy. This is my friend from Italy. He came.
It's amazing. I've seen that we've been working this season, and you can just see that it's paid off. So I'm just happy for the team, honestly.
We're in across Florida. We're Canada. We're Edmonton. We're everything. This is our cup, our season, our cup, our year.
It's been a generation since the Oilers last won a cup. The season didn't start off looking like a championship run, but Captain Connor McDavid says his team never gave up.
It's been a bit of a bumpy road, obviously. This was always part of the plan to be in this moment.
Sunday night's win against the Dallas Stars broke a dry spell for the Oilers. The last time they even made it to the final was 2006. This time, they'll face the Florida Panthers. Hockey analyst and podcaster Sunil Agnihotri says that team is coming in just as hungry for the win.
They did, I think, have one or two matchups in the regular season where Florida beat them pretty easily. But I mean, it's a playoffs. Anything can happen.
Including breaking a 31-year drought. The Oilers could be the first Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup since the 90s. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Edmonton.
Yo, we do it for the love, we don't do it for the fame. Reppin' Edmo, we don't play for the Flames. Yeah, we caught a few L's, now we back in the game. Hope you see a banner getting raised.
There is no question who Caden's weapon is cheering. Edmonton is his hometown, and this is his song named after the Oilers team captain.
I'll be skating on your whole team, Connor McDavid. Young player, but I'm in the league, Connor McDavid. And
that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
I was on the road in 19, making fans scream, skating on your team at high speed.
Well, you tell me, Jets fans, are we going for the Oilers? Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on the app. Or on YouTube. Morning, everybody. 12 degrees, misty out there this morning, a little bit of fog as well. Well, this hour on the show, we're going to meet an author who is a Winnipegger, former Winnipegger. She's teaching children how to take better care of the planet and their community through a brand new book. She's also going to be promoting it in the city, so stay tuned. We'll hear from her. In addition, this hour, the Great Resignation, quiet quitting, and now you might have heard that experts are calling what's happening now with workers something else, the Great Exhaustion. We'll hear more what's contributing to it and how to mitigate its effects, so that's this hour as well. And yeah, we're going to take you to Pride. Thousands of people in downtown Winnipeg yesterday. Heather Wells is in with our headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, we are nearing the 1-year anniversary of one of the deadliest crashes in Manitoba's history. June 15th last year, a collision on the Trans-Canada near Carberry left 17 people dead. Josephine Stokotelny was severely injured. She spent 3 months in hospitals, then 3 months rehabilitating. Her son Dawn calls her recovery a miracle. We're going to hear her story coming up. And yeah, it was Winnipeg's biggest parade yet. More than 6,000 people flooding downtown Winnipeg streets. The parade was blockaded briefly by a group of protesters. We'll hear what happened there coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
Okay, Heather, I got to tell you about one of my favorite moments on the route.
Okay.
Okay, so we're walking down Portage Avenue, CBC signs. It's windy and colorful, and people are lovely, and we're all talking. Good vibes all around. And I look over, and there's this man holding this little dog. And this little dog is like one of those hairless dogs. It's kind of like all you can see is a lot of gray skin, and then almost like a mohawk with because the hair was just so the hairstyle, it's sticking straight up. Just like barely any hair, but what it had was sticking straight up. And it was wearing like a little tank top and beads. This little dog, and the guy's holding him, and I'm like, oh, cool dog, and everyone's over there looking. And here's the kicker. I'm like, what's your dog's name? And he goes, Steve. I love it. It was like the perfect name for that dog, Steve.
He doesn't sound like a Steve to me.
Oh, I'm. You know what? If I had, I should have taken a photo. How did I not take a photo of Steve? I don't know. It was one of my favorite moments. That and just all the people dripping out of the Bay Parkade lot.
The photographs of the event are incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really, really another lovely event. CBC, of course, a proud sponsor of Pride and had a float in the parade. So a walking float, I should say. We were on foot. Chloe Friesen was there and is in this morning. So before we ask Abby about the forecast, let's say good morning to you.
Good morning.
Yeah, how'd you feel yesterday walking through the streets of Winnipeg?
Excellent. And I will confirm, Steve looked like a Steve.
He did,
the name
right?
very much suited that dog.
I know.
My favorite moment,
Sorry,
I think,
YouTube, no pics.
no
I
pictures of
apologize.
Steve.
I know.
I think one of my favorite moments was, again, that parkade. And me and you grabbed a beach ball each and decided that the people up in the parkade needed some fun too.
Yep.
And we used our volleyball skills to try to...
Okay, which I have none. Now you can tell. So Chloe coaches volleyball, like first ball up in the third level. I'm like in tier 12 senior women's. 3 balls later, my ball got there. It got there.
But very fun.
You biked in this morning. How's the commute?
I did. It was not bad. I mean, it was foggy for sure. I could feel some of that precipitation still hanging in the air, but it reminded me, I don't know if you've seen Stranger Things, but it's just a show about kids on bikes in like misty, foggy towns.
For sure.
And I was like, I'm in Stranger Things right now, except for the scary part. It was fun. So yeah, an excellent bike ride in. A few puddles out there in the bike lanes, but that's nothing you can't handle. Haven't heard anything about the commute or anything getting in folks' ways. But of course, as you're commuting, we'd love to hear from you. You can call our commuter line at 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Chloe Friesen. And Abby, good morning.
Good morning.
Okay.
She said Stranger Things. It felt like Stranger Things.
Right?
You know, the upside down world and all of that because of the fog covering the city. Yeah.
It's a little bit foggy in downtown Winnipeg, kind of maybe even more misty.
Yes, foggy and misty. That's what's in the forecast today. Driving in from the south, the edge of the city is more foggy, and you definitely you need to exercise caution while you're on the perimeters and also outside the city. In Winnipeg, it's 12 degrees, and we have that fog covering us. And also, we have a fog advisory in effect for Winnipeg and much of southern Manitoba. We're experiencing this near zero visibility in some areas due to this widespread fog that's actually developed overnight. And if you're out driving, just please be cautious as mentioned. Turn on your lights and maintain a safe distance. This dense fog will start to lift as the morning progresses. For today, it will remain quite varied. We start off cloudy with a chance of drizzle this morning. As the fog patches dissipate, we'll see a mix of sun and clouds later, and the winds will shift in from the north, and then it's going to be light, and we're going to have light breeze this morning, and we're going to be touching a high of 23.
Well, up first in the show this morning, how can we give back to the earth and to each other? That's the question a new children's book has set out to answer. It's called What Grows When You Give, and it's by former Winnipegger now living in Panama. Monique Pantel is with us this morning. This is her first book, and it follows the journey of a dove as it flies through a Panamanian village doing random acts of kindness. Now, she's actually on her way back to Winnipeg today, but first we've caught her at her hotel. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Congrats on your first book. Can you tell us more about what this dove does?
Yes, of course. Yeah, thank you so much. It feels like a really nice moment. This story has been coming to life for about 3.5 years, just as old as my son. I wrote it when he was born. And the story is a really beautiful, heartwarming story that essentially encourages children to be connected to the earth and learn a little bit more about biodiversity and reforestation. So essentially, this little dove goes around her little village and helps people in the best way that she knows how, which is by plucking off a branch from her mango tree where she lives. And with each sort of act of kindness, she gives and gives and gives. And there comes a point where she comes back to her mango tree and there are no branches left. And I don't want to spoil the story, but it's a really beautiful tale of regeneration and reforestation.
All right, we'll leave that part. We'll leave that part to people to read the book.
Sure.
What happens at the end. I know what happens at the end. It's a beautiful story.
Thank you.
The inspiration's actually where you're living, right? Like the town was actually, I understand, drawn in the book by a Winnipeg illustrator who tried to sort of... Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Of course, yeah. So I ended up landing and living now in a really beautiful town, quite remote. So we're about a 6-hour drive from Panama City itself. So we're very remote. We live, where sort of these jungle mountains kiss the Pacific Ocean, and it's a surf town, but there's not a lot of people there. People still ride horseback to go to the store and pick up milk kind of thing. It's a bit of a trip. And the book is the illustrations. I wasn't sure who I wanted to work with initially. And Lana Belton, who is an incredible, talented Winnipeg illustrator, her and I went through motherhood through the pandemic together. And we just reconnected in that moment. And then I asked her, would you ever be open to doing a children's book? And she was so excited. And when she read the story, she was just, she was all in. And now looking at the book, I can't imagine working with anyone else because the images just totally sing. Like every page is just filled with color and these really cute jungle animals, and all of the characters are an ode to the culture of where we live. It's beautiful.
Can I ask you more about land regeneration? That's obviously what has birthed this book. How has the way you practice land regeneration changed since you moved to Panama?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So in the particular area that I'm living and learning about, my partner, Luis, is from the region, and it's experienced over the past probably 50 years a lot of deforestation, so cutting down trees, cutting down all living things, really. And what you get is a ton of land for cattle grazing, but what it leaves behind is a lack of biodiversity. And so through land regeneration and through reforestation, which is planting trees and bringing back plants to restore the soil, you restore the biodiversity of the environment. So you bring back these different animals and you restore different corridors. For example, like monkeys are able to traverse, and different animals are able to traverse because these environmental spaces are restored. So, yeah.
Did your time living in Winnipeg influence the book in any way?
I did all of my schooling in Winnipeg. I'm a Red River College grad. I did the creative communications program a long time ago. So I'm a writer and an artist. I'm a photographer for many, many years. So I feel like the themes that I can't wait to come back to Winnipeg. I'm traveling back there today. But
Are you still with
in
us?
the book of
Oh.
Yes.
Do you
Can
know what?
hear me?
It cut out right when you were. It cut out at an
Shoot.
inopportune moment. That's okay. That's all right. You were saying you're traveling back to Winnipeg today, and you said the themes of, and then it stopped.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Wi-Fi.
Right.
The themes that you can feel in the book are community, and that is something that I don't think I've experienced any sense of community in Winnipeg.
Monique, thank you very much. All the best with your book, and travel safely back to the city. I know you're coming here to do some promotion around it. Appreciate having you on early. I always say big stars for the early guest.
Thank you so much.
Monique Pentel, photographer and author of her first book, What Grows When You Give. She is originally from Winnipeg, coming back here today to do a little bit of book promotion. But the book is set in a Panamanian village where we reached her this morning.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
I'm really concerned.
And I'm not really happy about that.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take. I'm Janet Stewart. From 12:30 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
It just brings everyone together.
Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you, weekdays on CBC.
June 3rd, Monday morning. Hopefully you had a great weekend, everyone. Thanks for making some time for us this morning on Information Radio. I'm Mercy Marcusa with our team here at CBC. We're live downtown. As mentioned, 12 degrees. Misty, a little foggy. In fact, we have a fog advisory that extends across the city of Winnipeg. Selkirk, Dougal, Portage, Morden, Brandon, Killarney, Melita, Verdon. You get the point. Fog going to be hanging around for us early this morning before it burns off later today. The fog will dissipate, and then a high of 23 degrees is what we're expecting for Winnipeg today. Stay tuned. We have business news coming up. We'll check the opening day's markets and stories. But right now, let's talk about a little workplace news. You might remember a few weeks ago on the show, we talked about a concept called the Great Exhaustion. Well, we're still talking about it. You might remember the Great Resignation, quiet quitting. Now some are saying that we're entering the era of the Great Exhaustion when it comes to how people are feeling, and especially in the workplace. Laura Kavanaugh is here to talk about it, registered psychotherapist and professor of behavioral sciences at Seneca Polytechnic. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So as you heard, we actually did an interview about this a few weeks ago, but it's such a trend and it's taking off everywhere. For those that missed the concept when we were looking at it first, what's meant by the Great Exhaustion?
Yeah, it's a term that's relatively new to me too, but when I heard it, I thought, yep, like this is capturing a phenomenon that I'm seeing, like both in my own practice, but also just kind of in the zeitgeist, So a lot of the things that we've been talking about, the quiet quitting, as you mentioned, and compassion fatigue, burnout, like a lot of the times when we're talking about that, we're really thinking of how it applies to our work and our work-life balance. But the term Great Exhaustion refers to the fact that many people are experiencing these feelings, burnout, fatigue, lethargy, across all aspects of their life, personal and professional. So it's not just confined to kind of the professional part of our lives, but it's pervasive across all aspects of our life, a kind of burnout on life. And I think what's happening is we're seeing this kind of perfect storm of like cost of living increase, financial instability. We can access a steady stream of distressing and graphic images and bad news from all around the world at any time. There's the reverberations from the collective trauma of the pandemic and the mental health impacts of the lockdown. And all of these are coming together to have a really significant impact on people's emotional well-being. And because a lot of these things affect young people disproportionately, especially around cost of living and financial instability, workplace changes, we're actually seeing, this exhaustion, which we used to kind of think of as a middle adulthood phenomenon, affecting younger people. In fact, one survey showed that of all the groups surveyed, the youngest generation, Generation Z, were the most affected by burnout.
How interesting. A few weeks ago when we were talking about it through, I believe it was the workplace lens. So it's interesting to widen it out. So how's someone going to know if they are tired, if it is burnout, or if it's maybe something bigger like you're talking about that needs attention, the Great Exhaustion?
Yeah. So, when we're talking about a lot of the same feelings, feeling exhausted, tired, fatigued, but there's a different element to burnout. There's a sense of overwhelm, like feeling like you can't cope, a reduced sense of efficacy, feeling like, you won't be able to cope in the future, a decreased sense of accomplishment, which means that even when things go well, it's hard to enjoy it. And a lot of people experience that kind of feeling across all aspects of their life, meaning that it's hard to get pleasure from the things that used to give you pleasure. The sense of being really emotionally depleted, like the feeling you don't have enough in the tank to deal with things. And I think the most kind of, or the key aspect of that is that there's a sense of hopelessness, a feeling that this is how I'm going to feel forever, so there's no point, there's no point in trying to catch up, there's no point in trying to engage, there's no point in trying to experience, passion or connection, because I'm just always going to feel this way. And one of the things that I always say in my practice is we're not very good at, especially the more overwhelmed we are, we're really not that good at identifying our feelings especially when we're in that kind of a state, right? Because we experience a kind of depersonalization, a disconnection actually from ourselves. So if you're looking from a behavioral perspective, it's often manifest as this feeling very critical of yourself, very critical of others, feeling very irritable, maybe overreacting to things. So, if your partner says, hey, can you grab me a cup of coffee when you're out? And you're like, oh my God, that's
Get your own coffee.
Yeah. That might actually be not related to your partner, but to these feelings of burnout.
I want to leave us a couple minutes here to address how we mitigate the effects of this. And if I could ask you specifically on young people, only because I think that is a different ball game than when you're talking about middle age. And I'm not minimizing the same feeling for the great exhaustion. But if you're in Gen Z and you're already feeling that, I mean, how important is it that we get ahead of it, and what can mitigate that for young people?
Yeah, super important. So I think, when it comes to burnout and sometimes mental health generally, right? What our instinct is to cope in the short term often ends up harming us in the long term. So, for example, when we are feeling burnt out and exhausted, we want to isolate. We want to just okay, I don't have the energy, so I can't deal with people. I just want to cocoon. But actually, that causes loneliness. And loneliness is very toxic. In fact, our brain interprets loneliness as a threat because over evolutionary time, we needed to be connected to our herd, to our tribe in order to feel safe. So, in fact, it shows that, there's research that shows that loneliness is as harmful as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And I think the younger generation, in part because they went through lockdown during formative years, in part because there's just sort of less opportunities, people are less engaged at work, especially young people, they're often hired on contract. Yeah. So, I think it's really, really important to seek out opportunities for connection in a way that
will work for you.
Face to face. Yeah, exactly. Right. And, whether that's even just saying okay, we're all busy, but we do, a standing coffee date, 10 to 11:30 on Saturday morning, always at this cafe, and whoever can make it comes, things like that, small things can make a huge difference.
We'll leave it there for this morning, Laura. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for having me, Marcy.
So that is Laura Cavanaugh with us, registered psychotherapist and professor of behavioral sciences at Seneca Polytechnic and the author of Hope Against Hope, Addiction Treatment and Recovery. The Great Exhaustion, is this resonating with you? 788-3205. It is Monday morning. You're listening to CBC's Information Radio. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and traffic quiet so far so early. If you need us, 788-3093. Business news after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it's 12 degrees. Clouds and fog start your Monday. That fog is going to dissipate, leaving us with a mix of sun and clouds today and a high of 23. We are approaching the anniversary of the deadliest bus crash in Manitoba history. It was June 15th last year. A crash near Carberry on the Trans-Canada left 17 people dead, 8 others injured. CBC reporter Alana Cole now with one woman's story of survival.
Did you sing with them?
Yeah, of course.
Of course you did.
For Josephine Stockotelny's family, time together is precious. The 86-year-old was one of the 25 people on the bus that collided with a semi-trailer near Carberry. The crash left 17 people dead, 8 others injured. Stockotelny doesn't remember seeing what happened.
And I was very sorry about all these people that died. And that's why I keep their picture handy and pray for them.
Stockotelny was flown to hospital that day. There, she wasn't breathing on her own. Severe injuries to her head, ribs, and pelvis were some of what needed to heal. Stockotelny spent 3 months in hospitals, then 3 months rehabilitating.
I am walking now, but with a walker.
Stockotelny's life is different now. She's in assisted living instead of her own home. A brain injury leaves her with memory issues. A monument honoring the victims will be unveiled in Dauphin June 15th. Stockotelny wants to be there to see it. Alana Cole, CBC News, Dauphin.
Well, it was Winnipeg's biggest pride parade yet.
I love your dress!
More than 6,000 people were part of yesterday's Pride Parade, with many more joining in as festivities went on through the day. Una Park was there.
It's actually my first Pride. I've been kind of out for a while, but it's so exciting and I love it so much. It's a party of community and people who you just get along with and understand you on a fundamental level, but also just on the surface and having fun, I would say.
Park says it's important everyone there could be out and proud of their identity. Pride Winnipeg President Barry Carlinzig says yesterday's turnout was amazing and highlighted Pride's focus on accessibility.
We had described audio, we have accessible viewing areas here at the festival as well, so we've really added to the accessibility piece of the organization too.
Now, yesterday's Pride Parade was briefly held up by a group of protesters with a handful of demands, among them searching the landfills, divesting from so-called corporate pinkwashing, and removing police from Pride. Chantal Garan speaks for the group.
Pride Winnipeg has not listened to community concerns for a number of years, and so this was action that we were forced to take to make Pride Winnipeg come to the table in a meaningful way.
Pride Winnipeg committed to working with all areas of the community, and they plan to get together with this group next week. The trial of Jeremy Skibitsky resumes today. It's expected to hear from an expert who assessed the mental state of the admitted Winnipeg serial killer. Skibitsky has pleaded not guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder in the 2022 deaths of Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Contois, and an unidentified woman given the name Mushkode Bishake Ikwe Iban. Skibitsky's lawyers say while he has admitted to killing the women, they will argue he's not criminally responsible because of a mental disorder. The trial is expected to wrap up later this week. Premier Wab Kinew joined some 70 runners at St. Vital Park yesterday for the CMV Canada Half Marathon. Congenital cytomegalovirus is a viral infection that occurs during pregnancy and can cause serious birth defects in infants. Kinew says the latest provincial budget earmarks up to $2 million to introduce universal screening for the virus.
You want every newborn in Manitoba to get this test. That way you can flag the presence of the virus and then potentially offer treatment and, just really improve the health and well-being of future generations of kids in Manitoba.
CMV Canada co-founder Rob Tétrault has been advocating for screening since his son was born with congenital CMV in 2008. The Winnipegger says it meant a lot to have Kinew announce the universal screenings at yesterday's run. Well, a Canadian team will compete in this year's Stanley Cup Finals. Last night, the Edmonton Oilers beat the Dallas Stars 2-1 in Game 6 of the Western Conference Finals, and hockey fans in Edmonton are thrilled.
We are so happy. This is my friend from Italy. He came.
It's amazing.
This is his first time seeing hockey, and he's so happy to be
It's
here.
the best experience ever. Thanks, Edmonton.
We want the cup! We want the cup! We want the cup!
Well, the Stanley Cup Finals start next Saturday with the Edmonton Oilers facing the Florida Panthers. And there hasn't been a Canadian team in the finals since 2021. And no Canadian team has won the Stanley Cup since Montreal way back in 1993. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather Wells.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells in our news center this morning. It is 6:35 a.m. on CBC 89.3, 990 a.m. on the app or YouTube. And Abby is trying to peek through the blinds, see what it's like out there.
Still foggy outside.
Yeah, hey? Okay.
Fog advisory in effect for southern Manitoba with near zero visibility. That started overnight, and conditions will improve later this morning. Currently, we are at 12 degrees. Today, expect cloudy weather with a chance of drizzle this morning, and then there's going to be a transition into a mix of sun and clouds. We're going to see some light winds from the north with a high of 23 today, and this evening we'll have a few clouds increasing overnight, and that should pave way for what we'll get tomorrow morning. Heading west to Brandon, it's 9 degrees with fog at the moment. The fog will dissipate this morning, leading to a mainly cloudy day with clearing sometime near noon, and we'll be seeing a high of 23 for folks in Brandon. Moving north to Thompson, it's 7 degrees and fog. Currently, that's the situation up there. We should expect mainly cloudy skies later in the day and a high of 17. Further north in Churchill, it is 0 with mist. Forecast includes cloudy skies with a 60% chance of rain and occasional fog here and there, and we'll be seeing a high of 3. Down in Dauphin, where it's 10 and cloudy, the forecast calls for mainly cloudy conditions. That's going to be clearing this afternoon with those fog patches dissipating this morning, and then we'll be seeing a high of 22. In Gimli, it is 12 degrees with fog. Also, for the Interlake region, the fog will dissipate this morning, leading to cloudy skies, and then a mix of sun and cloud, and the highs will hit 22. In Steinbach, it is 13 degrees, also with fog. Today's forecast includes foggy conditions dissipating this morning, then cloudy, becoming a mix of sun and clouds near noon. And finally, Morris is at 14 degrees with fog. Today's forecast also has fog, the fog dissipating this morning, and then a mix of sun and clouds, and we'll see a high of 24.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Well, traffic is pretty quiet, correct?
Yeah,
Friesen,
haven't heard anything on the commuter line so far.
Well, then let's take our time to invite Crystalie Ramlichan to the airways via Zoom. She's here for Biz. Hello there.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
I know you were listening, as was Chloe Friesen, who's filling in for Corey this morning, to our previous interview just before the news. We were talking about something called the Great Exhaustion. So you've heard of quiet quitting before, and the Great Resignation, but this is actually now talking about how people are feeling not just in their workplace, but having challenges, trying to get up that energy in all aspects of life. And it's affecting younger people as well. This is not just like midlife crisis burnout. Feeling any of that, or does that ring true when you think about people in your life?
For sure. Yeah. I know so many people who are stressed out by work, and I think it's a combination of, returning after the pandemic to, quote unquote regular life, being in the office, and then just this constant stream of information that we are constantly getting on our phones, and technology has enabled us to do so many great things, but it also has, it's all this input into our brain that humans have never dealt with before like that. Yep. And so, I think that I don't know the answer yet, but.
Well, I wondered from your perspective too, because you're about to tell us more about the economy. And I mean, in business news, there really hasn't been good news for a long time. Right?
Yeah, that's true. And you know what? I think that people, they just need to try to have something else outside of work that brings you some joy. I think that's something that helps
try to
me
connect. Chloe,
yeah, exactly.
you were also behind the glass during that interview, kind of really leaning into it. I noticed. Now I should identify, what generation are you then?
Gen Z.
You're Gen Z. So you were probably leaning in right when the guest was saying,
when we were talking about, or when I
your
was
generation's
listening.
affected.
Very much so.
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting. What stood out to me is the idea of, especially the pandemic, but also inflation and the prices of things, especially housing right now. It feels like things are a little bit further out of reach for Gen Z, according to folks that I'm friends with.
So does that press on you in a different way?
A little bit. One of my favorites, not really favorites, is just comparing maybe where your parents were at this age, or the idea of people saying, oh yeah, when I was your age, I had 3 kids in a house.
The idea every generation will do a little bit better, but then that feeling that maybe Gen Z, when you look financially, because of the economy, is not going to be able to achieve
and
that.
how that plays into maybe feeling tired or working towards goals feels a little different. Yeah, no, it was fascinating.
We will take calls on this morning. I mean, it might have resonated with you as well while you're listening. If you were with us earlier here in the show at 6:25 for the interview, 788-3205. Just a quick reminder, 788-3205. And we are on YouTube. You can comment right there as well. And we can pull comments there if you're watching the show. Well, speaking of which, Crystal Lee is here with Business News as mentioned. And the latest data shows that Canada's economy grew less than expected in the first 3 months of the year. What does it mean for interest rates?
Okay, well, there could be a little optimism here. That's because the weaker growth increases the odds of an interest rate cut from the Bank of Canada this week. And it's set to make its latest decision on Wednesday. So while CIBC and RBC are predicting a cut this week, senior economist with TD Bank, James Orlando, has a bit of a different take. We spoke to him on Friday.
One would think, given that the Bank of Canada has a history of being very direct with their communication and wanting to prepare Canadians and markets for the fact that they're going to be cutting interest rates, you would probably expect them to use next week's meeting by holding rates and then teeing it up for a cut happening in July. So that would be most likely to happen based on how the Bank of Canada has been acting in the past. With respect to, they like to communicate first and then act second.
Now, Governor Tiff Macklem has said a rate cut is within the realm of possibility, but the central bank wants to see the right conditions before lowering its policy rate from 5%. It wants to see a sustained slowdown in the economy to ensure inflation is heading down to the 2% target. And inflation fell to 2.7% in April.
Let's go to another story. Some news about Air Canada and its pilots actually broke last night. What can you tell us this morning?
Yeah, well, Air Canada pilots intend to request help from a federal conciliator to assist in stalled contract negotiations. So their union says the two sides are not close to a deal despite a year of contract talks, including almost 6 months of voluntary mediation. So the union plans to leave the voluntary process on June 15th. Now, Air Canada says it will continue to push for an agreement in the coming months under the normal bargaining process. And the airline insists customers can continue to book and travel with confidence. Now, Canadian pilots have been seeking gains that will bring them closer to deals won by their U.S. counterparts. So last year, pilots with Delta, United, and American Airlines secured agreements that included 4-year pay hikes ranging from 34 to 40%. Now, once the union requests a conciliator, the federal labor minister has up to 15 days to appoint one. If no deal is reached within 60 days, there is a 21-day cooling off period before the union could be in a position to strike. And Marcy, last week, WestJet Encore reached a deal with its pilots to narrowly avoid a potential strike there.
And before we look at markets this morning, Crystal Lee, another big company is facing a data breach, and one that a lot of us who love going out to see music, we've all bought tickets from them.
Yes, anyone who's ever gone to an event has probably dealt with this company. So Live Nation, the owner of Ticketmaster, says it's investigating a data breach it discovered on May 20th. So this is just the latest in a string of high-profile corporate hacks in the past year. Live Nation says it's working with forensic investigators now after unauthorized activity was found in a third-party cloud database that mainly contained Ticketmaster data. Now, a hacking group named Shiny Hunters claims to have stolen user data of over 500 million Ticketmaster customers. And some media reports say the group claims to have names, addresses, phone numbers, and even partial credit card information. It is reportedly demanding $500,000 US and is threatening to sell the data if the ransom is not paid. And the company says it is now notifying law enforcement, regulatory authorities, and some users about all this. Now, Live Nation has not mentioned Shiny Hunters by name, and it has not disclosed what kind of personal information has been breached. And Marcy, this is happening as the concert promoter has been hit with the first and likely a wave of consumer lawsuits. The U.S. government has sued to break up the firm, arguing the company has been illegally inflating concert ticket prices.
What's going on in the markets this morning so far?
In Europe, markets are higher as investors look ahead to the European Central Bank's latest interest rate decision later this week. Germany, the UK, and France are all up. In Asia, India stocks have hit record highs, leading to gains in Asian markets. Japan is up, Shanghai is down, Hong Kong is up. Oil is up 9 cents to 77.08 US per barrel. Gold is up $6.40 to $2,352.20 US per ounce. And the dollar is down 1/10 cent to 73.28 cents US.
All right, Krista Lee, thank you, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.
Okay, thanks, Marcy. Talk later.
That's Krista Lee Ramlichan from our business desk. Time right now is 6:46 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app or YouTube. I'm R.C. Marcusa. Thank you so much for joining us here on CBC this morning. Great to have you along. Hopefully your weekend went great and you're getting ready for the week here. You know what? The rain is not going to go away. We're going to have days where it won't be too bad like today once this mist and fog is over with. But then again into tomorrow, we're expecting more showers in significant amounts, like 10 to 15 millimeters. It just seems to come and go in these big waves. I had hail yesterday in my backyard, and pretty significant hail. It went away quickly. It was pea-sized, but it sure came down. So today, we do have a fog advisory. It's misty out there. It's 12 degrees, but as I said, that'll clear up, and then a high of 23 with sun and cloud for most of the day, at least in Winnipeg. Well, I'll tell you what, before that hail and rain happened yesterday, it was a beautiful day for the Pride Parade and the different events that were going on at the Forks. They were cut off early once the storm moved in, but the parade went off really in a beautiful way. There were 6,000 people, as you heard in the news. They had a record turnout. Organizers are saying that's their official count this morning. The ribbons and the rainbows and the glitter and good vibes were all over downtown. Now, we're going to hear more from people who attended the parade coming up after 7 o'clock this morning. But next on the show, as you may have also heard in the news, for a short time at the start of the event, a blockade of protesters halted the parade from starting on Portage near Fort Street. Now, protesters handed out a statement. They demanded Pride Winnipeg, quote, end complicity with genocide, divest from corporate pinkwashing, remove police from Pride, and center QT BIPOC leadership. The statement also said that Pride has, quote, strayed from its revolutionary roots so far that today we protest Pride itself and hold accountable those who claim to represent us, end quote. CBC's Arturo Chang was at the parade and also was there to speak with some protesters. He spoke with the group's spokesperson, Chantal Garand.
I think the point is being missed if it is only about it being pro-Palestinian. This is queer and trans-led, and everyone who is a part of this is queer and trans, and our liberation is tied to many things, including liberation in Palestine. We stopped the parade for 45 minutes and listed demands to Pride Winnipeg. Because Pride Winnipeg has not listened to community concerns for a number of years, this was action that we were forced to take to make Pride Winnipeg come to the table in a meaningful way. Every year, the AGM meetings are a little contentious, including community members brought up no cops in Pride. Pride Winnipeg ended up agreeing to not have uniformed police in Pride that year with their word that they would come back and formalize something within the year for the next Pride, but they just let that expire. Our demands today were also meant to counter how Pride just lets things go off into the wind without actually having a solution and following up on it.
It's a statement against genocide, I guess, is what you're calling it here, and your demand. So can you tell me a little bit more about that as well? This was a pro-Palestinian.
Yeah. No, there's genocide happening that has happened in Canada, and that's been named. There is genocide happening in Palestine. There is genocide happening in Sudan. And it is not just we're calling it genocide. It's been called genocide and verified as such.
How many people participated in the blockade?
We had over 50 initially taking the road with us together. And then we had more people joining us once they found out what was happening. We discussed the demands that we put forward. We were told that they were reasonable and that they could be acted on, that they wouldn't be able to fully employ them today. We got a written statement that was signed by them that we would be meeting starting next week to discuss on how to enact these demands. So we have that commitment from Pride. One of the concessions that was made as well was for us to leave the road, we were given time at main stage to ensure that everyone was aware of the demand and what happened at the parade earlier today. We were able to read our pamphlet that was handed out at the parade, front and back. So the preamble with the history of what we were talking about and the demand, so approximately 45 minutes, once an hour. They were respectful and willing to listen to what we had to say, and they were willing to work with us moving forward to enact our demands.
That was CBC's Arturo Chang speaking to the Pride Parade blockade spokesperson Chantal Garand. Pride Winnipeg issued this statement on the blockade. They said discussions were, quote, held at the blockade to reach a collective agreement for change, end quote, as Chantal just said as well. They also said they're committed to working with all areas of the community, starting with regular consultations moving forward, to ensure that our organization and its events represent the voices and diversity of all 2S LGBTQ+ individuals. Pride Winnipeg says that the community-led group that gathered to block the parade did so peacefully, expressing their right to protest for change within Pride Winnipeg and Pride celebrations. If you want to read more about that aspect of the story, you can go to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba. And I'll just mention that in the next hour of the show, we'll have more on Pride as well, and we'll hear from some of the folks that were walking in the parade yesterday as well, about why they came. It is at 9 minutes to 7 o'clock on 89.3. I'm Marcy Marcusa with a busy control room this morning. We got Abby and Chloe and Kevin and Brad all over there. Feeling lonely on this side of the glass, you guys. Misty, 12 degrees. Brandon, foggy, 9. Thompson, foggy, 7 degrees is where we're at right now. Well, let's turn our attention to national and international news next. Ukraine can now strike inside Russia with foreign weapons. That is after Canada, the U.S., and nearly a dozen European countries gave Ukraine permission to do so late last week. It satisfies a long-standing request from the Ukrainian government to use foreign weapons more freely. Andrew Rasulis is a fellow with the Canadian Global Affairs Institute and here to talk about it. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So before this, how were foreign weapons being used, if not to carry out strikes within Russia's border?
They were used to carry out strikes inside of the part of eastern Ukraine that's occupied by Russian forces, in effect the combat zone, sort of the big picture, the Donbass and Crimea. The Ukrainians did strike targets in Russia proper, but they were using their own systems, mostly drones that the Ukrainians manufacture themselves.
Okay. How strict has Ukraine been about not using foreign missiles to strike inside Russia for obvious reasons?
Oh, it's been strict in the sense that there's not much of a choice. These systems, these long-range systems, have GPS, and basically the GPS is controlled by the donor country, as well as the actual ignition of the system. So essentially, Ukraine has to cooperate with the donor country in order to launch these systems. So basically, they couldn't do it without the support or the concurrence of the donor country.
How will this change the war potentially?
It will prolong it somewhat. It will strengthen somewhat Ukraine's ability to continue to conduct its strategic defense. But it will not change the nature or the direction of the war, in the sense that it will still wind up, in my opinion, as a kind of a stalemated armistice at the end of whenever this takes place, whether it's 24, 25, because Ukrainians simply lack the military strength to be able to force the Russians back to the 1991 border. So that's not going to happen as far as I can see, and it prolongs it somewhat.
Ukraine also received permission on Friday to fly F-16 fighter jets from the Netherlands into Russian territory as well. What difference will that make, do you think?
It's the same principle as the land-based systems that we've just spoken about. So the F-16 is essentially like an aerial platform, and the idea here is the Dutch are saying that the F-16s that they're going to donate, and they haven't arrived yet, that the missiles from these systems can be shot into Russia proper. So it's the same concept, but I don't think that the F-16s will actually go into Russian airspace, simply because Russian airspace is very well defended with their own anti-aircraft systems.
How does Russia view the change in policy?
They've indicated that they see this as escalatory, but they're going to, as far as I can tell, They will be measured in their response. They will first see the effect of these systems. Now, so far we've just got words. These systems have not actually been fired. So I think the Russians will wait to see if they're fired, when they're fired, what the damage assessments are, and then they will take retaliatory measures, in accordance with their political military interests, where they could be direct attacks against the systems in Ukraine, or they could be, in fact, lateral, a hybrid type of a non-kinetic attacks against the donor countries. These are all options on the table, but the Russians will, I think, retaliate in a measured way when they've figured out what this is about.
All right, Andrew, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
That's Andrew Rasulis, a fellow with the Canadian Global Affairs Institute. National and international news is coming up on World Report in 4 minutes' time from now. Well, just enough time to before headlines to let you know that we're going to be on location on Thursday. So if this is your neighborhood, write to us. Come see us at Norquay School. We're going to be in Point Douglas. So Norquay School is the location of our live morning show on Thursday morning. Why are we there? Well, the city recently said they're putting out a neighborhood plan for Point Douglas. This is one of the oldest neighborhoods in Winnipeg, home to the oldest house in our city, in fact. And so we're going to be there. It's been a long time coming, having an actual plan for that neighborhood. And part of it's going to involve housing. Part of it's going to involve what to do with a neighborhood that is divided by the Disraeli Bridge, also divided in many ways by residential areas and warehouse districts. But it is growing and changing. And so where should it go next? That is our remote on Thursday at Norquay School in Point Douglas. So if you want to join us, please do. If you have a story idea, whether you can be there or not, please write to us at radio893@cbc.ca. I'll just say that again slowly. Our email, radio893@cbc.ca. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells for news headlines.
Good morning. Well, it was Winnipeg's biggest Pride parade yet. More than 6,000 people filled downtown Winnipeg streets, many more joining in through the day. The parade was blockaded briefly by a group of protesters who had a handful of demands for Pride Winnipeg organizers, among them divesting from so-called corporate pink washing, accepting sponsorships, corporate sponsorships. So we'll hear more about what happened there. And the Starbucks in Osborne Village will not reopen. Last month, the company said it was temporarily closing to evaluate the store. We now know the Starbucks in Osborne Village will not reopen. At issue initially, according to the local biz, was safety concerns. Those stories and more in our next local news at 7:30.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, the fog advisories just ended for Winnipeg and for Gimli. To the southeast in Steinbach, still fog advisory in that area. Also still a fog advisory in Brandon. Misty out there, though, and cloudy in Winnipeg. Our high today is going to be 23 degrees. The commute, looking pretty good out there so far. So early, so Monday. 788-3093 if you want to reach us with traffic tips. In the next hour of the show, we're going to hear more about the Pride Parade yesterday and the huge turnout from the thousands of people that were there. So stay tuned for that. Also, we're going to get a full interview with Caitlin Gowerluck, who's been in court for most of this month. Lawyers for an admitted Winnipeg serial killer are expected to present their case this week for why he should be found not criminally responsible. We're going to hear more about what that could mean for the trial, so stay tuned. That's coming up with a special report with Caitlin Gowerluck in the next hour. Also in the next hour, everyone's been talking about the weather and all of this rain, but was it our rainiest May on record? We're going to look at that in the summer forecast ahead coming up right after 7. And then here's something you might have also done this weekend. You might have been out and about garage sailing. Despite the push of the Kijijis, despite the push of Marketplace, garage sales are still a thing. We're going to hear more about that as CBC's Jim Agapito hit the town to do some garage sailing to find out about the trends for 2024. I'm Marcy Marcus. Stay with us. World Report is next.
Today on The Current.
7-hour delay, flight canceled, now I'm looking for my baggage.
Canadians love to talk about how unpleasant it is to fly in this country, and official complaints have been piling up by the thousands with airlines, the Competition Bureau, and what they're doing to fix this coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report.
Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Today marks 5 years since a national inquiry released its final report into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. It included more than 200 calls for justice. Governments and public institutions promised to act on those recommendations. But as Olivia Stefanovich reports, the commissioners who issued those calls are still waiting for progress.
And this is genocide.
5 years after the national inquiry arrived at that startling conclusion, former commissioners say they haven't seen the systemic change needed to stop the violence against missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
So, of course, we're frustrated, disappointed.
Former Commissioner Michelle Audette is now a Quebec senator. She's calling on all governments to act more quickly on the inquiry's 231 calls for justice. But it's a struggle.
We lost faith in what they said they would do.
They can say no, enough is enough.
Marian Buller is the inquiry's former chief commissioner. She says there's still time for the federal government to make use of the last year and a half of its mandate and implement recommendations such as creating a national Indigenous and human rights tribunal.
They want to be reelected, and what do they need to do? And that's to make firm changes, firm systemic changes, honorable changes to the way the federal government is approaching the genocide.
The federal government has committed more than $2 billion to address the calls for justice, but much of the work from that funding still needs to be completed. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
Sí se pudo. Claudia Sheinbaum will be Mexico's first female president. She was elected last night with at least 58% of the vote.
La presidenta posiblemente con más votos obtenidos.
Outgoing President Andrés Manuel López Obrador says it is possible Sheinbaum got the most votes of any president in Mexican history.
Nuestro gobierno será honesto.
At a rally last night, Sheinbaum promised Mexico will have an honest government, and under her leadership, it will be free from influence and corruption. She also promised there will not be price hikes for fuel or electricity. Claudia Sheinbaum is a climate scientist and the former mayor of Mexico City. She begins her 6-year term as president on October the 1st. India's financial markets are surging this morning. Several exit polls are reporting Prime Minister Narendra Modi will have a resounding victory in the country's election. Nearly 1 billion people in the world's largest democracy were eligible to vote. The final results are expected on Wednesday, but Modi's supporters are already predicting his BJP will increase its majority and will likely win 2/3 of the seats in the country's parliament. The CBC's Chris Brown has the story.
As India's colossal exercise in democracy wrapped up, some voters in Amritsar, the site of some of the holiest shrines for Sikhs, said they believed a soaring economy had earned Prime Minister Narendra Modi a record third term. Ravi Mahajan is a doctor and Sarbit Singh is an engineer.
You see, I feel that the country has been progressing very well under his leadership for the last 10 years.
The development wheel which they have spinned, it is really doing well with the voters, yes.
While a Modi victory was predicted from the start, just how large and whether his polarizing language would hurt his campaign was uncertain. In this speech, Modi labeled Muslims as infiltrators. Opponents claimed his team used thuggish tactics to suppress Muslim voters and intimidate opposition candidates. Political analyst Rahul Verma says the opposition Congress Party attempted to play up those fears, but it is unclear how successful it was.
Some of the key issues that was worrying voters, such as questions on economic anxiety and related to misuse of institutions, some of those have become sort of like talking points.
Modi has denied he plans to undo the secular foundations of India or change the constitution. But the early exit polls are already hinting he may be in a strong position to do so. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
Convocation ceremonies are still going ahead at the University of Toronto. They start today. A pro-Palestinian encampment is still on the downtown campus. The encampment is the subject of a trespass notice and legal action. The university requested a court injunction to give police the authority to remove the protesters who refused to leave. But the judge considering the case says the earliest a hearing could happen is June 19th. Protesters say they don't see how their presence would disrupt graduation events. For the first time, the child of a sitting U.S. president is facing criminal prosecution. The federal trial for Hunter Biden begins this hour. He's accused of lying to a federally licensed gun dealer in order to purchase a firearm. The 54-year-old could face 25 years in prison if convicted. Many Democrats, including Congressman Adam Schiff, say the verdict must be accepted.
I think the president himself will respect the verdict, much as, it is painful, I'm sure, to see one of your children on trial. But yes, Americans should accept when a jury reaches a verdict, they should accept the result. That is part of our democracy.
Hunter Biden has pleaded not guilty to the gun charges. Prosecutors allege he lied about his drug use during his application for the weapon. Biden has admitted that he struggled with an addiction to crack cocaine in the past. He says that the charges against him are being used as a political weapon to target his father's re-election campaign. Firefighters in Northern California continue to battle a fast-spreading wildfire east of San Francisco. Thousands of residents have been forced to leave their homes and highways have been shut down. The Coral wildfire is being fanned by high winds. It grew to 50 square kilometers in 24 hours over the weekend. And as Yvette Brand reports, there are fears that an expected heat wave could make things worse.
The fire started small on Saturday, but soon exploded in the tinder-dry grasslands east of San Francisco. Towns and acreages were evacuated as flames jumped the Interstate 580, shutting highways. Cattle rancher Sheila Elworthy pulled over to talk as she fled.
The wind was so bad. Now they're on it, but I think it last night they just weren't on it. I had to call them back, say nobody's here. So it was not a good night.
The fire started near a federal lab's explosive testing site after the facility set some controlled fires to create a guard. But it's not clear what sparked what's now California's biggest fire so far this year. Idama Shoemaker, the meteorologist for the National Weather Service in Sacramento, says incoming winds won't help.
We do have a significant heat event, and we do have an excessive heat warning in effect.
And a dangerous heat wave is forecast to spike in the San Joaquin Valley by Wednesday, upping wildfire risks even higher. Yvette Brand, CBC News, Vancouver.
Thousands of people are traveling to the beaches of Normandy this week, including many Canadians. They're going to mark the 80th anniversary of D-Day, a turning point in the Second World War. But as Julia Wong tells us, those historic beaches are starting to erode.
It was on these beaches nearly 80 years ago that Allied soldiers landed. But these same beaches, which hold history in the sand, are also slowly wearing away. Xavier Michel is an assistant professor of geography at the University of Caen.
It is an issue, a concern, when you have an erosion in memory place along the landing beaches.
In some places, erosion has eaten away at cliffs climbed by soldiers to fight the Nazis. There have been landslides in some spots, leading to questions about how long these physical links to our history can remain.
Some people told us that the emotion regarding this place comes from this unique location, as it wouldn't be possible to recreate in the same way the same link between visitors and heritage.
For Natalie Worthington, director of the Juno Beach Center, erosion is a reality the museum faces every day.
The question is not to know if it's going to happen that will be flooded. It's when. We are surrounded by water, 300 degrees. We've got the sea, we've got the harbor, and we've got a river.
This week, thousands of people will gather to remember the lives lost, sacrifices that will never be forgotten, even if the historic sites that commemorate them may have a shaky future. Julia Wong, CBC News, Normandy, France.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
12 degrees and cloudy in Winnipeg this Monday morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team at Information Radio. Thanks for joining us on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on the app or YouTube. We'll get a full forecast in a moment, and you might be wondering, is it going to rain more? Yes, it is. This half hour, we're going to actually talk about the forecast. What's been going on with the weather, and what are we expecting for the rest of the summer? So stay tuned for that. Also, this hour on the program, there might still be some glitter on the roadways on Portage Avenue last night from the thousands and thousands of people who took part in Pride, one of the biggest parades ever. The organizers are saying some 6,000 people. So we're going to hear from some of them. And to a serious interview coming up at 10 to 8 this morning. Experts say that an admitted Winnipeg serial killer's plan to argue he's not criminally responsible is unusual. We're going to hear more about why and how it compares to similar cases. Stay with us. I'm talking about Jeremy Skibitsky, and our reporter that's been in court, Caitlin Gowerlach, will have a special report for us this hour. Right now, let's go to other news headlines with Heather Wells.
We are nearing the one-year anniversary of one of the deadliest crashes in Manitoba's history. June 15th last year, a crash on the Trans-Canada Highway near Carberry left 17 people dead. Josephine Stockatelny was severely injured and spent 3 months in hospitals and then 3 months rehabilitating. Her son, Don, calls her recovery a miracle. We're going to hear more about what happened and how she's doing now. That's coming up as well. A 51-year-old man who was reported missing in the RM of Fisher on Saturday has been found dead. Fisher Branch RCMP say he was found yesterday. His death is being treated as a homicide. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby Adeyemi, how you doing with the forecast over there?
Yeah, looking good outside. It's clearing outside my window here, so it's a good view for me for now. Some areas already seeing the fog patches dissipating, and some areas outside the city still experiencing kind of kind of visibility issue, which is going to be improving as the morning progresses. Currently, Winnipeg, it is 12 degrees. Like I mentioned, that fog patch is dissipating already. We can expect a mixed condition later. It's going to start off cloudy, and then we're going to see a chance of drizzle this morning. But don't let that dampen your spirit, because the sun will break through those clouds later on, and as we see these fog patches clearing us, leaving us, we'll get a mix of sun and clouds. The winds will start off from the north, and that should be picking up to like 20 kilometers, so that's going to be easing up as the day progresses and then becoming light later this morning.
You know, I thought it already started raining because behind you the whole window's wet, and I'm like, what's going on?
It's the window cleaner.
I know.
It's not raining yet. Come on, calm down, Mercy. It's going to be more like drizzle. Don't say that. Yeah. But tonight, just expect some fog and some clouds to roll in, and nothing too dramatic. We should get cloud covering later this evening, and then the temperatures will stay relatively mild. But right now, it is 12 in Winnipeg. We're heading to a high of 23.
Tell you what, there's the scent of Pat Kanuga in the studio this morning. And that is because Chloe Friesen is here filling in for Corey. Pat Kanuga was our director, of course, who retired in December from CBC. But what are you wearing?
I'm trying to show it off for the camera.
Okay, yeah, they can see you on YouTube. I see
Can
you
I see
there.
it? Beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm wearing this lovely purple crew neck with this lovely graphic that just says Information Radio 990. Actually, 5:30 till 9 was the time.
Yeah, we used to be on a different time.
And more.
So you know what? That was actually when I started here in 2001. That was what we had on our posters. That was the slogan. I always remember because Heather would go, news and more. Yeah. So you got the old school sweatshirt.
Did,
was that the parting gift that Pat gave you?
This was my parting gift from Pat
that.
Kanuga. He had gifts for everyone, and I was lucky enough to get this sweater. So when I work on Information Radio, occasionally I like to put it on.
Oh, I like that. I like that. You this morning are covering the commute, and it's been quiet, eh?
It's been very quiet. The only thing I can mention is that there's a few puddles in the bike lanes. I learned that this morning when I made the mistake of wearing socks and sandals on my commute. So when I found a puddle, I did the thing where you just kind of kick your legs up and you just ride through it and just kind of hope for the best.
And yell, save the socks.
Yes, basically. I think I did. I'm doing pretty good. So other than puddles in the bike lanes, not a ton going on out there. But of course, as you're commuting this morning, if anything is getting in your way, any stalls or collisions, maybe something in the bike lanes, something on a sidewalk, give us a call, 204-788-3093.
All right, what's going on with the weather? According to Environment Canada, after a sunny weekend, Winnipeggers might soon be reaching for our umbrellas again. Abby just talked about it, right? Tomorrow, we're like 10 to 15 millimeters of rain. Yesterday afternoon, I got tons of hail in my part of Winnipeg. And not just rain, like heavy rain. So what are we expecting for the rest of June and heading into summer, and how does this compare to other wet months we've had? Well, Scott Kaler's up and with us, President and Chief Scientist at WeatherLogics. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So it felt like it rained a lot in May, but how much rain did we actually get in the month of May?
Well, at the airport in Winnipeg, there was 115 millimeters, which, while quite a bit of rain, actually didn't rank that highly, and not even in the top 10 wettest months of May for Winnipeg. But there were some pockets of the city that got more. We did have that really strong hailstorm earlier in the month, and so that gave some higher amounts in kind of the western side of Winnipeg. But overall, yeah, wet month, but actually not ranking that high historically.
It's interesting, hey, because at the water cooler, we all think, oh, well, it must be a record, but it's not. It did come down sort of when it came down, it was like legit, like really heavy, and then lots of thunder and lightning, hail, moments of hail. We had hail yesterday in my neighborhood as well. What's your sense about, and then sometimes it would flip from that back to a sunny sky, like really big swings back and forth. When you look at this through your eyes, what does that mean about the weather patterns?
Well, the weather pattern right now across Manitoba and the Canadian prairies is one where the jet stream is just continuously directing weather systems through our region, and that's causing this pattern of frequent rain and thunderstorm events. It's really not that unusual for this time of year, but right now it kind of feels a little bit strange just because last year was a drier year and we've had a lot of drier years lately, but occasionally this pattern does develop, and that's why we're seeing all of this active weather. It's kind of the opposite of a heat dome where the jet stream is way off to the north and we're stuck in a hot and stagnant pattern. So while it's definitely becoming a bit unpleasant for some, for our climate, it's not too unusual for this time of year.
What's the weather going to look like in June?
Well, the month of June's starting out kind of just how May ended, so it looks like it's going to continue to be pretty active, lots of weather systems going through, meaning more chances for rain and more thunderstorm activity. As you mentioned, looks like the next big chance will come through tomorrow with their chance of some significant rain and even thunderstorm activity. And then after that goes through, looks actually like a bit of a cool down later this week, but a bit drier. As I look in the longer range, though, I do see potential for more of these weather systems going through, so it doesn't look like a big shift in the pattern quite yet.
Is June going to be cooler than normal, just when you think about temperatures?
Well, it's looking like it's going to start out cooler than normal. As far as the first half of the month goes, that's kind of the trend we're seeing. I expect we'll see it warming up in the second half of June, though, so probably on the whole that will cause the month to probably average out close to normal.
What's our normal daytime high for June on average?
The average daytime high in June starts in the low 20s at the start of the month, and then by the end of the month it'll be kind of in the mid-20s.
And what about the rest of the summer? What are you seeing in the longer-term forecast?
Well, that's always a tough one. The predicting summer weather is the toughest time of year just because of all these localized thunderstorms and so on that we get. But at WeatherLogics, we've been expecting overall it to be a wet summer, and we've already seen a lot of that wet weather. As far as temperatures go, we expect overall temperatures will kind of average out to be around normal. That means for kind of the core of the summer, daytime highs generally in the mid-20s. But we will see some occasional periods of hot weather, but we're not anticipating really prolonged heat waves
like last
for
year.
Long stretches. Yeah, exactly.
All right, Scott, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Teeing up the month of June, weather-wise, and looking ahead to the summer on this Monday morning, Scott Kaler, President and Chief Scientist at WeatherLogics.
Do you have ideas on how CBC can become more accessible? Well, we want to hear from you. How can CBC become a barrier-free public broadcaster for people living with disabilities? We'd like to invite you to share your ideas with us by registering for our public consultations at cbc.radio-canada.ca/accessibility. With your help, we can make CBC more accessible for all.
Sports coming up in 5 minutes from now. The Oilers punch their ticket. 12 degrees in Winnipeg, foggy, and Brandon 10 degrees, and still a fog advisory there. Thompson is misty and 7 degrees this Monday morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thank you so much for joining us on Information Radio here on CBC. Well, as we continue to share with you, it was a sea of color filling Winnipeg's downtown yesterday. The music was pumping. The rainbow colors were everywhere. Everything was glittery, and there were smiles ear to ear. Thousands and thousands of people coming out for what organizers are saying is the largest turnout they had for their Pride Parade ever. 6,000 people is their count. And that was some of the sounds from yesterday's parade, which made its way from the legislature to the Forks. It started about 11 o'clock yesterday morning, and Arturo Chang, CBC's Arturo Chang, spoke to some of the attendees.
My name is Hudu Abdul Hamid. I'm here in Winnipeg because I've been chased out from my country, Ghana. So I came here to seek protection from the government of Canada because being an LGBTQ plus in Ghana is a hell. You either be lynched or killed. Even just a few months ago, the Parliament of Ghana passed a bill. Anyone being an LGBTQ person shall be prosecuted. Yeah, so that's why we run here to seek protection from the government of Canada. I don't want to be prosecuted because in Ghana, if they say they want to prosecute you, they will take you to jail. And after that, your community people, they will track people to kill you, and they can just say you are disappeared. Meanwhile, they kill you and then hide you somewhere, even bury you without the notice of anybody. So we are really spreading this message to Africa. Being an LGBT person is a privilege. Look at how lovely it is here. We are so impressed. We are very happy and excited here. So I am encouraging people, especially my people from Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, wherever, whole of West Africa, to be united, and then let us come together as one. LGBT, they are lovely and caring. I can testify that when I came to Winnipeg here, I feel home. I feel like I'm home because people are loving it. We are protected by the government of Canada, and we really appreciate them so much.
I am MJ Jones. I'm in grade 10. My parents are them.
Tell me, why are you here?
Because I'm queer. I'm here with my friends for a good time.
Have you been to Pride Parade before?
No, this is my first one.
Okay, so how does that feel?
Exciting. I've never seen this many queer people all at once ever.
So my name is Dayet Aquino de Leon. My pronouns are he, him, they, them, Shania. For today, so we are it's our first ever Pride Parade. Like, not me, but the organizations. We are called Bahaghari Pride Manitoba. So Bahaghari from Tagalog and Spanish word means rainbow. So we are the first ever Filipino Manitoban 2S LGBTQI+ non-for-profit organization, 78 years in history, and we are the first ever in Filipino community. And we are glad to be here. We are here now, and we will never go anywhere. So yeah, it is very important because it provides representation. It provides inclusive and welcoming space within the Filipino community. You know, pre-colonial Philippines, we already exist. Very important to have a representation because a lot of our people in the community, they don't believe that we should be exist, we should be like this, or we should change who we are. But little did they know that it's just the way we were born.
Barry Karlenzig, and I'm the president of Pride Winnipeg. So far today, the parade was the largest parade we've ever had. There were over 6,000 people partaking in the parade. We don't have the numbers of the footage as to who was watching the parade or the final numbers. The rally was the largest turnout we ever had. Some great, amazing speakers. Our grand marshals and our youth marshals gave such moving speeches.
Any differences when it comes to this parade compared to previous years?
The turnout really was the biggest piece. So we've had an amazing turnout. We've had to expand. We've had to do different pieces for the parade. This year, because of the heat last year, we added a water trailer. We've added different viewing areas. We have an accessible viewing area we had an accessible viewing area this morning in Canada Life Centre, both inside and outside. We had described audio. We have accessible viewing areas here at the festival as well. So we've really added to the accessibility piece of the organization too.
CBC's Arturo Chang there speaking with Pride Winnipeg President Barry Karlenzig. We also heard from some attendees at this year's Pride Parade. Una Park at their first parade, Etienne Equino de Leon and Hudu Abdul Ahmed at the beginning, talking about being at their rally and talking about fleeing their home country of Ghana in West Africa out of fear of persecution. Just arriving in Winnipeg last fall and in Pride yesterday, walking with thousands of others. If you want to see some of the beautiful, colorful pictures, I know we've had a couple of them up on our YouTube stream while we were talking there, hearing the Arturo's report. But you can go for more photos online to cbc.ca/Manitoba. It was just a really, really lovely afternoon before the rain came and blew out the concert at the Forks, right? It just poured down. So they did have to end things a little early. Well, next on the show, let's talk about the fact that Canada has a team in this year's Stanley Cup final. Scott Regehr joins us. Hello to you.
Hey there, Marcy.
All right, let's get into the excitement.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Canada as a team, but is it Canada's team? We'll talk about that in a second. The facts, though, are the Edmonton Oilers, Marcy, eliminated Dallas last night, claiming the Western Conference title. Bizarrely enough, for a team that boasts maybe the two best offensive players on the planet, Edmonton won despite managing 10 shots on goal. In fact, the Oilers minus 25 shot differential last night, the worst by a team to ever clinch a conference title. No matter. It's how many goals you score, not how many shots you get. And Oilers captain Connor McDavid scored one last night while weaving through traffic that I still have trouble getting my head around. Too hard to describe here on radio. Watch the highlight, though. McDavid was asked about Canada's 31-year-long Stanley Cup drought as they get set to face Florida.
You know, there's going to be pressure playing in the Stanley Cup final, no matter where your team's from. So, obviously, we're a Canadian team. We got great Canadian fans, and it feels good to maybe unite the country a little bit and have something to bring people together. You know, that's what sports is all about: is bringing people together, and you know, hopefully, we're doing that for Canadians across the country.
Sounds like Connor's been watching a certain pizza chain's commercial. There is reason to believe the country is rooting for the Oilers, Marcy. An Angus Reid poll before the playoffs started found that around 2/3 of Canadians will cheer for any Canadian team to win the Cup. That is up considerably, about 7% from the same poll question posed back in 2016. So will this be the year? We'll find out starting Saturday. Edmonton traveling to Sunrise, Florida, in what will be the longest distance between Stanley Cup final opponents in history. What's another 6,600 kilometers after 9 months of hockey and more than 3 decades of waiting for a Canadian Cup champ?
And Winnipeg fans can weigh in. Are you cheering for Canada or the coach? Right?
Paul
when you
Maurice's
look at this?
Panthers, yeah. Well,
all right, let's still stay talking with polls, though, here, because you have one out of the world of soccer, a controversial poll ahead of the European Championship, Scott.
Yeah, a poll German national team coach Marcy Julian Nagelsmann calls racist. The survey conducted by public broadcaster ARD asked Germans whether they want to see more white players on the national team. 21% of respondents said yes. Here's Nagelsmann.
We need to wake up a bit. There are people in Europe who've had to flee because of war, economic factors, environmental disasters. And when we say something like that, I think it's crazy how we turn a blind eye and simply block out such things. We're playing in a European championship for everyone in the country, and anyone who can play top football is invited to be a national player and give their all for their country. And I hope we never have to read about such a survey again.
The current national squad, Marcy, has a number of players with mixed heritage, including the captain, Ilkay Gundogan. This controversy comes just weeks after the team's uniform makers, Adidas, were forced to ban fans from buying German jerseys with the number 44 on them. The font for those jerseys made them look more like symbols used by the SS, a unit responsible for many crimes against humanity committed by the Nazis. So this is the backdrop as Germany gets set to host the European Championships on June 14th.
Finally, let's switch gears here significantly. Golf's Canadian Open has been won by a Scot, and there's some really nice moments in this story.
Oh, yeah. Two Scots, really. Robert McIntyre may have done the playing, Marcy, beating the field by finishing 16 under yesterday, but he couldn't have done it without his dad. Heading into the tournament without a caddy he felt comfortable with, Robert called his father, Dougie, who's the head greenskeeper at Glen Cruton Golf Course back in Oban, Scotland. Not only did the McIntyres have to fight off a challenge from hard-charging American Ben Griffin, they had to concentrate with a CBS drone buzzing overhead. Robert was so annoyed with the wasp-like sounds, he threatened to throw his club at one point. But that was all forgotten, Marcy, after fending off Griffin by a single stroke.
In my head, I was like, I'm wanting to win this for my dad. This is a guy that's taught me the game of golf, and I just can't believe I've done this with him in the bag.
I got phoned. I'm sitting on the couch at home, and I'm like, can I leave my job?
Of course you can.
Aye. 8 o'clock the next morning, I'm on a flight out here, and wow.
Nice
Beautiful
story.
story just before Father's Day.
All right. Thank you, Scott.
You betcha.
Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is 12 degrees. So we've got a mix of sun and clouds over Winnipeg. We're going to see a high today of 23. We are approaching the anniversary of the deadliest bus crash in Manitoba history. On June 15th last year, a crash near Carberry left 17 people dead, 8 others injured. CBC reporter Alana Cole now with one woman's story of survival.
Did you sing with them?
Yeah, of course.
Of course you did.
For Josephine Stucco-Telney's family, time together is precious. The 86-year-old was one of the 25 people on the bus that collided with a semi-trailer near Carberry. The crash left 17 people dead, 8 others injured. Stucco-Telney doesn't remember seeing what happened.
And I was very sorry about all these people that died. And that's why I keep their picture handy and pray for them.
Stucco-Telney was flown to hospital that day. There, she wasn't breathing on her own. Severe injuries to her head, ribs, and pelvis were some of what needed to heal. Stucco-Telney spent 3 months in hospitals, then 3 months rehabilitating.
I am walking now, but with a walker.
Stucco-Telney's life is different now. She's in assisted living instead of her own home. A brain injury leaves her with memory issues. A monument honoring the victims will be unveiled in Dauphin June 15th. Stucco-Telney wants to be there to see it. Alana Cole, CBC News, Dauphin.
The trial of Jeremy Skibitsky resumes today. It is expected to hear from an expert who assessed the mental state of the admitted Winnipeg serial killer. Skibitsky has pleaded not guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder in the 2022 deaths of Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Contois, and an unidentified woman given the name Mushkade Bishake Ikwe Iban. Skibitsky's lawyers say while he has admitted to killing the women, they will argue he's not criminally responsible because of a mental disorder. The trial is expected to wrap up later this week. Downtown Winnipeg was filled with sounds and color yesterday. More than 6,000 people flooding the streets for Pride Winnipeg's biggest parade yet. Thousands more watched from the sidelines. Hudu Abdul Hamid fled persecution in Ghana for being LGBTQ+.
Being an LGBTQ+ in Ghana is a hell. Look at how lovely it is here. I can see people being together as one. And then, the support they give to each other. People here are very lovely.
And Pride Winnipeg's president, Barry Carlinzig, says yesterday's turnout was amazing.
We've had an amazing turnout. We've had to expand. We've had to do different pieces for the parade.
Yesterday's Pride Parade was briefly held up by a group of protesters. They had a handful of demands for Pride Winnipeg organizers, among them searching the landfills, divesting from so-called corporate pinkwashing, that's accepting sponsorships from corporations, and removing police from Pride. Chantal Garand speaks for the group.
Pride Winnipeg has not listened to community concerns for a number of years, and so this was action that we were forced to take to make Pride Winnipeg come to the table in a meaningful way.
Pride Winnipeg did commit to meeting with the group next week. The Starbucks in Osborne Village will not reopen. Last month, the company said it was temporarily closing to evaluate that store. The local biz, the Osborne Village biz, said they were told it was because of safety concerns. In a statement yesterday, a spokesperson for Starbucks says after careful evaluation, the store will remain closed. It says the review included whether the location provided a warm, welcoming environment. All staff have been offered the opportunity to transfer to other locations.
Pride Winnipeg is not listening to community concerns.
A 51-year-old man who was reported missing in the rural municipality of Fisher on Saturday has been found dead. Fisher Branch RCMP say he was found yesterday afternoon, and police are treating his death as a homicide. A Winnipeg runner who has been trying to improve the lives of newborns is happy the province is going to start screening for a virus that can cause serious birth defects. Congenital cytomegalovirus, or CMV, is a viral infection that occurs during pregnancy. Rob Tétrault ran in yesterday's half marathon in St. Vital Park, hosted by CMV Canada. Premier Rob Canoe was also there to announce the province's latest budget includes up to $2 million for universal screening for the virus. That means all newborns in Manitoba will be tested, and Tétrault is thrilled.
The Premier of our province decided this was an important enough cause to announce to my friends, to my family, to my wife, to my volunteers, to all my running buddies, that we would have universal screening for all newborn babies for CMV, the number one cause of infant disability.
Tétrault has been calling for universal screening since his son was born with congenital CMV in 2008. You can find more news updated throughout your day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thank you, Heather Wells.
You're welcome.
6:36. Look at, I did it too. I've more time has passed than that. It's 7:36 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. or on the app or YouTube this Monday morning. Thanks for joining us here on CBC. It's time for your regional forecast, and Abby Adiemi has our details.
Good morning once again. Currently, it is 12 degrees in Winnipeg. The fog patches are dissipating, giving way to a mix of sun and clouds and a chance of drizzle this morning. Today's high will see 23, and tonight we should expect some clouds to roll in, and tomorrow will be cloudy with showers and risk of a thunderstorm in the morning. Heading west to Brandon, it is 10 degrees. Fog patches dissipating but still sticking around. It's going to be leading to mainly a cloudy day later, and then that would clear up around the noon period, and we will be seeing a high of 23. Moving north to Thompson, currently 7 degrees and fog patches dissipating at the moment. We're expecting a mainly cloudy day with a high of 17. Further north in Churchill, it is 0 with mist. The forecast calls for a cloudy day with a 60% chance of rain and intermittent fog. We should be seeing a high of 3 degrees. Down in Dauphin, it is 11 degrees and cloudy. We're also seeing those fog patches dissipating this morning, heading to a mainly cloudy day with a clear afternoon ahead, a high of 22. In Gimli, it is 12 degrees for the Interlake region. We're seeing the fog patches dissipating. Also, it's going to be leading to a mix of sun and clouds later, and we will see a high of 22. Steinbach is currently at 12 degrees with fog patches dissipating, leading to a mix of sun and clouds near afternoon at the noon period, and we'll get to a high of 23. And finally, in Morris, where it's 13 degrees, today's forecast for the Pembina Valley region calls for a mix of sun and clouds with a high of 24. Right now in Winnipeg, it is 12. We're seeing fog patches dissipating, and we'll see a mix of sun and clouds by the afternoon period.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Chloe Friesen is filling in for Corey this morning and has details on our commute.
Good morning. I got a call from Lindsay on the commuter line who mentioned that westbound Roblin, just past the Moray Bridge, it's blocked off by police right now. So if that is part of your commute, you might want to avoid that area. Again, westbound Roblin, just past the Moray Bridge, blocked off by police currently. Thank you, Lindsay, for calling the commuter line about that. And if there's anything else that is getting in your way, give us a call, 204-788-3093.
So we have an item coming up next, Chloe, about garage sales. And I always loved a good garage sale back in the day, but I have thought with Kijiji and then, of course, now with Marketplace, which is connected to Facebook, it's another buy-sell app. I thought maybe they would be going out of style, but not so much.
No. I mean, I grew up in a smaller town. I grew up in Morden, so garage sales were just like the highlight of the summer. Lots of garage sales. And then I came to Winnipeg, also the highlight of the summer. Still so many of them going on. I will go to a garage sale, though, not for useful things.
Okay.
I love a trinket.
Oh, are you?
I love like a weird little something to put on my desk.
My family calls them trankies. Ooh, trankies. That's how we always used to say because my mom
like
was
those.
my mom was obsessed with trankies.
If you look at my desk, you'll know.
Well, no matter what you're looking for at garage sales, as Chloe and I are saying, they are still a thing. Winnipeggers love to find those epic deals all across the province. Manitobans, as Chloe said in Morden, was her experience. Now, one of the best places to find the deal is the garage sale. But what are the trends and rules around garage sales? Is there actual etiquette when you're out there? We sent CBC's Jim Agapito out this weekend to find some of the best secrets for navigating these sales, because one person's trash could just be your treasure for a price, of course. He landed in a neighborhood in St. Vital.
I saw a sign outside on the street, and then I said, garage sale, and then I looked, and I was like, ooh. I walk into the backyard, and I see a garage full of stuff and people. So, hi, what's your name?
Larissa Steele.
Is this your place?
It is.
And we're in your garage, correct?
Correct.
Okay, describe the scene for us here.
So we have a whole section full of brand new, gently used kid and baby items. We have some home decor tools, including saws, jewelry. We've got some very niche items like a brand new grad dress.
Tell me about that.
It is fully sequined from the top to the mid-bottom, mermaid style, hot pink and fuchsia with ruffles all the way along the bottom with a very scandalous slit up the front.
Okay. So for many years ago, how do you feel with parting it? Like you said, now is the time?
Now's the time. So it's actually my original dress from too many years ago. It was beautiful. Since we're in the season, see if anybody loved it as much as I did.
The fact that you're having garage sale in today's age, there's a thing called marketplace. So why should people go and continue to go to garage sales?
I think it's important to continue that community and in person. We've had a lot of people come by and just to say hi. I've met a lot of neighbors that I haven't met, even though I've lived in this community for 8 years. So I think it's just important to do face-to-face instead of always online.
Now, have you seen changes over those years?
Yeah. I've taken a few e-transfers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's something that we didn't do 20 years ago. The style of things that are popular these days are definitely different than a few moons ago.
Haggling. You've haggled with people or you've dealt with hagglers. How do you deal with both ends?
I think it's fun. It's interesting because you want to get, a little bit of money for it, but I can definitely appreciate the other side. When I go garage sailing, I want to get the best deal. So I think it's a lot of lighthearted banter, and it just makes for a really good time.
What do you think is the best thing that someone here could get?
The ultimate find would be my brand new Schwinn bike that I've only had the chance to ride 5 times. But that we don't have any use for anymore. So I think that one would have been a really good deal.
Do you mind if I sit down beside you? Okay. Hi, what's your full name?
Patty Saliga.
Coming up to here, I heard that this is a multi-family sale. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, it is actually. There's 3 families. So you were just speaking to my daughter. This is her house, so she's got her stuff. I've got stuff here as well with my husband. And her mother-in-law's got some stuff here.
Garage sailing, is this something that you've done a lot of in the past or something that you enjoy doing?
Yes, very much so. I've always done it. I've always enjoyed doing it, going to try and find that great find and get some good deals. And just lately, we haven't been able to do so much in the last few years.
What is the best find that you've ever had at a garage sale?
Oh, my best find. There's nothing that comes top of mind. But you said you had one, right? My husband had one.
Don Saliga.
What was that?
My best find was a windsurfer.
A windsurfer?
Yeah. A windsurfer. I think I got it for probably about $400. And I used it for years and I still have it. And that was probably about 25 years ago.
Don, you found a windsailor. Have you windsailed before you did it?
I never did it before that. That was my first time trying it with the new equipment and had to buy a few parts for it, but it worked great.
How does one decide at a garage sale that I'm going to take a windsurfing?
I don't know. It's just a challenge, something I always wanted to do. I did it. There is a lot of good deals, a lot of stuff that you don't even realize. Like yesterday, at my own garage sale that we're having, that I'm helping with, someone brought a boat anchor. And 2 days ago, I just said, I need a boat anchor, 15-pound boat anchor. And there was one sitting here from one of the other family members. So you never know what you're going to find.
That was CBC's Jim Agapito out over the weekend at a garage sale in Winnipeg. It's interesting. I mean, can you haggle? Do you haggle? Do you not? I'm not a haggler. I always end up feeling uncomfortable unless the person says they're open to an offer. And apparently some people will feed you at garage sales. Like they'll just have free food there. And I don't know if they're enticing you in or if that's become a new thing in 2024. Every year we seem to ask you about something you found, whether it was giveaway weekend or whether it was on Marketplace. But if you did find something awesome at a garage sale, or imagine a big sale and a windsurfing board, that's a pretty good find. If you found something great, we want to hear about it. 788-3205.
Whether you're hanging out or out on the move, stay in the know with CBC Listen. The cost of living with Paul Havershrud goes beyond facts and figures.
Real estate is the 800-pound gorilla of Canada's economy.
And What on Earth with Laura Lynch explores the climate change crisis, problems and solutions.
What happened that made you start to think and see climate change differently?
The Cost of Living and What on Earth. Available now on CBC Listen. There are stories you just can't stop thinking about. They take you somewhere, they introduce you to someone, they share something new with you. Liftoff. Those are the stories you want to share with your friends, and CBC's award-winning documentary team is bringing them to you every week on Storylines. Storylines, new this season on CBC Radio 1, and always on demand on the CBC Listen app.
Still a fog advisory for Brandon, Steinbach, and Morris. Here in Winnipeg, that's been lifted. We are expecting a high of 23 today in the city of Winnipeg. Chance of drizzle this morning and then a mix of sun and cloud a little bit later. In traffic, we have one thing to tell you about here. Westbound Roblin just past the Morey Bridge. Thank you for everyone. We're getting multiple calls now that Chloe's picking up. So westbound Roblin just past the Morey Bridge is blocked by police. So you're going to have a delay, or you're going to come upon that and have to find a way around if you can. 788-3093 if you have an update on that. Also, I'll mention new construction barricades are up this morning at Chief Peguis at the Settlers Bridge. Heading westbound, you're going to lose a lane as well. And you're eastbound already down to one lane. I know on my drive-in at in Portage Avenue I'm going to forget the cross streets, so I shouldn't even say it. Right around Wolseley there, I just passed Arlington. It all goes down and funnels into to one lane as well on Portage. So just because it's a busy part of the stretch, I'll mention it there too. 788-3093. That's where you can call the traffic line. Well, we're going to hear more about a story you might have caught in the news this morning after 8 o'clock on our show. It's about that Dauphin senior who is still trying to make sense of her life a year after they survived one of the deadliest crashes in Manitoba history. So we're going to hear more about that after 8 o'clock in a special report. Well, speaking of special reports, the trial of Jeremy Skibitsky resumes today in Winnipeg, with the admitted serial killer's lawyers expecting to argue why he should be found not criminally responsible. Experts say that plan strikes them as unusual, considering the details of the case. Skibitsky has pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder in the deaths of 4 women: Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Contois, and an unidentified woman given the name Mashkade Bishike Ikweban. The CBC's Caitlin Gowerluck has been covering the trial, and this morning sets up the next steps.
Good morning.
So what does not criminally responsible mean?
Yeah. So not criminally responsible, or NCR as it's sometimes called for short, it's a special kind of verdict that is basically an off-ramp from the regular justice system. So it's for people who, yes, they committed crimes, but they were essentially so mentally ill at the time that they maybe didn't realize what they were doing. So it kind of diverts them from that regular judicial process. So there's 2 factors that you have to prove to get that under the criminal code. One is that you actually had a mental disorder at the time of your offense or offenses. And the second is that that mental disorder had to have actually made you unable to understand either what you were doing or that it was wrong. So then if you get both of those and you are found NCR, not criminally responsible, you then go under the purview of what's called the Criminal Code Review Board. So often you're then in a secure psychiatric facility. Generally then it's up to that review board to determine what kind of freedoms you get, if any. To learn a little bit more about what that looks like, I talked to Brandon Trask. He's a former prosecutor who's appeared before that review board, and he's also an assistant professor at the U of M who teaches about mental health and the law. Here's how he describes it.
If somebody's experiencing delusions, specifically in the context of paranoid schizophrenia, for instance, that individual may have an easier time making the case that they should be found NCR, because what they were doing was essentially not their own choice. They felt that they had to act in a certain way because they were receiving instructions to do so.
So in Manitoba, we might think about some of the more high-profile cases like Vince Lee. So he was found not criminally responsible after beheading Timothy McLean in an unprovoked attack on a Greyhound bus near Portage la Prairie in 2008. So psychiatric evidence at his trial showed that he's schizophrenic and that he suffered a major psychotic episode at the time of that attack. He was rehabilitated and eventually released. Now, that can happen if you're found not criminally responsible, but it's not always the case.
What do we know about what role this might play in Skibitsky's trial?
So we don't know yet what the expert opinions are from the people who assessed his mental state or the details of the defense case regarding that yet. We'll learn more about that probably this week. Both sides, we know, have experts that have assessed Skibitsky. We know, though, from his confession to police in 2022 that was captured on video, he told them that he has borderline personality disorder, that he's also been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, and that he'd struggled with addictions. He said as well that he was coming down from doing mushrooms when he killed the first woman he's admitted to killing, and that he was on methamphetamine during the 3 other killings. So his argument could be linked to one of those, but according to Brandon Trask, that U of M professor we just heard from, it could also be because the defense sort of had no other choice, especially considering some of the evidence against him in the trial, including that police statement I just mentioned. So he confessed to all 4 killings, right? So that really could limit their possible arguments, and it would have been pretty hard for them, he says, to argue that Skibitsky was not guilty.
One argument that was still remaining for them to make was in relation to the pursuit of this finding of NCR. And so, that the defense is pursuing that finding is interesting, perhaps not surprising given the evidence that was put forward by the Crown.
So basically he's saying that because Skibitsky has admitted to killing all 4 women, the defense may have been kind of running out of options.
How does this compare to other cases involving serial killers?
So I also talked to John Bradford. He's the forensic psychiatrist who assessed a number of high-profile cases in Canada, including some serial killers. He says it's unusual to hear about a case like Skibitsky's involving an argument that he's not criminally responsible. And Bradford says when he assessed some of those more high-profile cases, so like Paul Bernardo, for example, Robert Pickton, Russell Williams, he looked into whether any of them would qualify to be found not criminally responsible. And he said in each case, he found that they wouldn't, in part because of how much planning and organization goes into those kind of serial sexually motivated killings.
They have to find a victim, they have to persuade them and abduct them, and, they have to go to various means to do that. And then usually afterwards, there's some disposition of the body in a way to avoid being arrested or being found guilty. And all of that goes against really, I'm generalizing, when people are psychotic, they tend to be disorganized.
So I also talked to Anita Seghetti. She's a longtime mental health lawyer in Toronto who's been representing not criminally responsible clients for almost 30 years. She says those kinds of cases can involve serious crimes like homicides, and sometimes even more than one of them. And they can also involve crimes that were committed over a longer period of time. But she says usually those things don't go together, like the 4 homicides that Skibitsky has admitted to over a 2-month period.
It would be extremely unusual to see an NCR verdict attaching to a period of time of offending that spans several weeks or months, where there are repeat offenses of extreme violence, such as homicide.
So do we actually know if any serial killers in Canada have been found not criminally responsible?
So sort of not, at least not in the way that we know it now. So there are cases from decades ago, from before the current not criminally responsible law was brought in after a 1991 Supreme Court decision. One example is Peter Woodcock. So he was later known as David Kruger. He killed 3 young children in Toronto in the 1950s. And people like him at the time would have been found not guilty by reason of insanity. often because they'd been diagnosed with psychopathy, meaning they lack empathy or remorse. But the experts I talked to say that likely wouldn't happen today, in part because that diagnosis wouldn't qualify them for the criteria that are now needed to prove you're not criminally responsible, including, like we heard earlier, that your mental disorder had to have made you unable to understand that your actions were wrong. Here's what that Toronto lawyer Anita Zaghetti says about that.
There's no question that they understood and had the capacity to understand the nature of their actions, either that they were sexually assaulting, usually women or children, or killing human beings. You have an acute awareness that your actions are wrong, but your lack of empathy that's linked to your psychopathy makes you not care.
But lots has changed since then, and we generally don't really see those kinds of offenders coming through the not criminally responsible system now.
So, Caitlin, what is next in the trial of Jeremy Skibitsky then?
So court is now scheduled to resume. We're not sure how much longer it'll go for. It's scheduled now to go until Thursday, but we'll sort of have to see how things go. We do expect to hear at least from both experts I mentioned earlier, so the one for the Crown and the one for the defense, who both assess Skibitsky. Forensic psychiatrist Bradford says people often think about these kinds of court cases that they end up in what's called kind of a battle of the experts. But he says experts actually, in his experience, often agree on the diagnosis, but they disagree on some of the finer details.
What is more often the dispute is the impact on the person's state of mind at the time of the crime. It's more around the legal parameters that you get a disagreement, trying to interpret what we know from a psychiatric standpoint and how it affects somebody's mental functioning and how that may or may not fit the legal criteria.
In the coming days, the defense will then lay out the specifics of that case. Then it'll be up to the judge to decide.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
That's Caitlin Garlick, reporter with CBC Manitoba. And if you want to read more on the story and the trial, of course, please go to cbc.ca/Manitoba. It is 4 minutes now to 8 o'clock on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio. Just want to dip into the weather forecast here. So we still have a fog advisory for Brandon and Steinbach, but we do not have it for Winnipeg anymore. It is, though, cloudy out there and a high of 23 degrees. Now, we are expecting we could see a little bit more drizzle this morning, but eventually we're going to have sun and cloud for the rest of the day. Tonight, though, more rain, a few clouds, and that hails for, tomorrow, more rain. So cloudy overnight, and then tomorrow we're expecting a risk of a thunderstorm late in the morning and afternoon, 10 to 15 millimeters. So it's just been a rainy part of our forecast and cycle here in Manitoba for sure. So we've got more coming tomorrow. Right now, though, cloudy and 12 in Winnipeg, fog in Brandon, as I mentioned, 10 degrees, and in Thompson it's misty and 7. Before we check on your morning commute, let's get to Heather Wells and our news headlines.
Good morning. Well, we are approaching the anniversary of the deadliest bus crash in Manitoba's history. June 15th last year, a crash on the Trans-Canada near Carberry left 17 people dead, 8 others injured. Among the injured, Josephine Stockel-Telney. She was severely hurt, spent 3 months in hospitals, then 3 months rehabilitating. Her son, Don, calls her recovery a miracle. The Starbucks in Osborne Village will not reopen. Last month, the company said it was temporarily closing to evaluate the store. The Osborne Village Biz said they were told it was because of safety concerns in the area. And in a statement yesterday, a spokesperson for Starbucks says after careful evaluation, that store will stay shut down. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Chloe Friesen is filling in for Corey and has details on your commute to 8 o'clock here.
Yeah, you were talking about the fog advisory. I got a call from Paul, who was traveling between St. Rose and Dauphin on Highway 5. He says it's extremely foggy there. Visibility is about one hydro pole kind of at a time in terms of distance. So if you are traveling on Highway 5, if you're in the St. Rose Dauphin area, be very careful. Turn on those lights. Fog is quite thick there. If there's anything else getting in your way, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Chloe. We also may still have that issue on westbound Roblin, just past the Morey Bridge. Chloe's been taking a lot of calls on that. So let us know if that's updated. There were police on scene there. 788-3093, just to reiterate all the info. Coming up on the program after 8 o'clock, 1 year ago this month, June 15th, as you've been hearing in the news, 17 people lost their lives on their way to a casino near Carberry. It was one of the deadliest crashes in Manitoba history, and most of the seniors from Dauphin and the area. After 8, we'll hear from one of the survivors of the bus crash as they continue to figure out what life looks like in the aftermath. We have a special report from the CBC's Alana Cole. Stay with us. That's coming up. World Report, though, is next.
On Cue with Tom Power.
Our show is not typically the place to get the news until now. Huey Lewis will be here to talk about his new musical based on the music of his band, Huey Lewis and the News, touring Europe when he was 16, and the devastation of losing his hearing. That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Canadians love to talk about how unpleasant it is to fly in this country, and official complaints have been piling up by the thousands with airlines, the Competition Bureau, and what they're doing to fix this, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Mexico has a new president-elect, and for the first time, it is a woman. Her name is Claudia Sheinbaum. She is a climate scientist and the former mayor of Mexico City, and she won the election last night by a significant margin, at least 58% of the vote. Freelance reporter David Argan has been following the results from Mexico City. And David, what is the reaction to Sheinbaum's win this morning?
Mexicans poured into central Mexico City, waving flags, honking horns. They're very, very excited with their choice. Polls throughout the campaign showed that Claudia Sheinbaum was going to win by a landslide, and she did. She's going to claim roughly a 30-point victory. She's going to take both houses of Congress with mega majorities, which could allow her the possibility to change Mexico's constitution without negotiating with any of the opposition parties. The candidate of outgoing President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, who led a popular and populist government for the last 5.5 years in Mexico City. People liked López Obrador, and Sheinbaum promised to continue his project, and it was to the point where she really didn't put forward much of a project of her own. There were only very minor tweaks on it, so people approved of López Obrador, and that transferred to Sheinbaum. It just remains to be seen how much of her own program gets done and how much of it is a continuation of López Obrador.
What are the main challenges ahead for her?
Well, security. There were 32 candidates killed in this electoral cycle, candidates and potential candidates. This is organized crime, drug cartels, which are disputing territories. And the theory is that a lot of times they're not necessarily moving a lot of drugs, so they're running things such as extortion rackets. What they want to do is control local governments, and that gives them control of the police. They can steer public contracts in their way, control of the treasury. So that's going to be a big challenge.
All right. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you very much.
Freelance reporter David Agran in Mexico City in India.
We have created a world record of 642 million proud Indian voters.
Chief Election Commissioner Rajiv Kumar is calling the country's general election a historic moment for India. It is the largest election ever held in the world.
This is 1.5 times of the voters of all G7 countries, US, UK, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Canada, all put together. And it is 2.5 times of the voters of 27 countries in the EU. That has been the incredible power of the voters of India.
Exit polls suggest Prime Minister Narendra Modi will retain his position and win a third term. Modi's BJP leads the National Democratic Alliance. They are likely to win a 2/3 majority. Modi has faced criticism over the country's rising unemployment and attacks against religious minorities, particularly Muslims. Hunter Biden is in a Delaware court today for the start of his federal trial for criminal gun charges. The son of U.S. President Joe Biden is the first child of a sitting American president to be put on trial. It is an untimely distraction for the president. He's trying to focus on his re-election campaign. We get the latest from the CBC's Katie Simpson in Washington.
Mr. President, are you preparing for the debates at all?
Any response to Bibi, Mr. President?
Under a sunny sky in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, Hunter Biden joined his father, President Joe Biden, Saturday morning for a bike ride near the ocean. An apparent moment of calm before the younger Biden's criminal trial begins. A case that is expected to reveal deeply personal and embarrassing family details that could hurt Joe Biden's re-election campaign. Jury selection starts today. Hunter Biden is accused of illegally buying and possessing a gun at a time when he was addicted to drugs. Prosecutors plan on calling Hunter Biden's former romantic partners as witnesses to examine a dark period of his life while in the throes of addiction, with Joe Biden's political opponents ready to pounce on anything that could be used against the president in the upcoming election.
Absolutely. And I think the president himself will respect the verdict. Much as, it is painful, I'm sure, to see one of your children on trial.
Democrats, including Congressman Adam Schiff, are urging Joe Biden to accept the outcome no matter what, in the hopes of maintaining public confidence in the justice system, especially in the wake of Donald Trump's attacks following his guilty verdict last week. If Hunter Biden is found guilty, he could face 25 years in prison. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
The trial of an admitted serial killer resumes today in Winnipeg. Jeremy Skibicki's mental state is expected to be the focus. The 37-year-old has pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder in the deaths of 4 Indigenous women in 2022. Crown prosecutors say the killings were racially motivated, and Skibicki preyed on vulnerable victims. His lawyers admit he killed the women, but they argue he should be found not criminally responsible because of mental illness. A BC woman is calling out Canada's largest advocacy group for seniors. She says CARP, or the Canadian Association of Retired Persons, has been teaming up with Big Tobacco and is selling access to its members. Erica Johnson has this Go Public investigation.
Ellen Gould of Powell River, BC, recently got an email from CARP, the Canadian Association of Retired Persons, inviting her to be part of a focus group on vaping. She thought it was advocating for the health of seniors.
And it turned out, au contraire, it wasn't.
She learned the focus group was sponsored by Rothmans, Benson & Hedges, a big tobacco company that now sells vaping products.
I was just completely shocked that CARP would do this.
Gould, who happens to be a public policy researcher, has looked into vaping products, knows they're highly addictive and contain toxic chemicals. Rothmans has launched a campaign, Unsmoke Canada, an effort to get government to change the Tobacco Act so vaping products aren't included. Robert Schwartz is executive director of the Ontario Tobacco Research Institute. He says the vast majority of people who use e-cigarettes to try to stop smoking are unsuccessful.
They either return to being exclusive cigarette smokers, or they become dual users of both e-cigarettes and cigarettes, and that's even worse.
Rothman says its research with CARP members is legal, appropriate, and essential. CARP declined an interview request. The president said Rothman's approached his organization, and CARP thought the focus group questions were interesting. He declined to say how much money was involved. Ellen Gould has canceled her membership in CARP, saying the group can't advocate for older adults, then get in bed with Big Tobacco. Erica Johnson, CBC News, Vancouver.
The Edmonton Oilers are going to the Stanley Cup final. They clinched their spot by beating the Dallas Stars 2-1 last night. It has been a couple of years since a Canadian team made the NHL final, even longer since one brought Lord Stanley's Cup north. And as Sam Sampson tells us, fans in Edmonton are very, very excited.
As the last seconds of the game wound down, the crowd held nothing back.
We are so happy. This is my friend from Italy. He came.
It's amazing. I've seen that we've been working this season, and you can just see that it's paid off. So I'm just happy for the team, honestly. We're in across Florida. We're Canada.
We're Edmonton. We're everything. This is our cup, our season, our cup, our year.
It's been a generation since the Oilers last won a cup. The season didn't start off looking like a championship run, but Captain Connor McDavid says his team never gave up.
It's been a bit of a bumpy road, obviously. This was always part of the plan to be in this moment.
Sunday night's win against the Dallas Stars broke a dry spell for the Oilers. The last time they even made it to the final was 2006. This time, they'll face the Florida Panthers. Hockey analyst and podcaster Sunil Agnihotri says that team is coming in just as hungry for the win.
They did, I think, have one or two matchups in the regular season where Florida beat them pretty easily. But I mean, it's a playoffs. Anything can happen.
Including breaking a 31-year drought. The Oilers could be the first Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup since the 90s. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Edmonton.
Yo, we do it for the love, we don't do it for the fame. Reppin' Edmo, we don't play for the Flames. Yeah, we caught a few L's, now we back in the game. Hope we see a banner getting raised. I'll be skating on your whole team.
There is no question who Cadence Weapon is cheering. Edmonton is his hometown, and this is his song named after the Oilers team captain.
I'll be skating on your whole team. Connor McDavid, young player, but I'm in the league. Connor McDavid anticipated when I came in.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
On the road at 19, making fans scream, skating on your team at high speed. You looking minor league, Everly beside me, maroon on the other side. Haters try to block my goals, watch me beat them glove side.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team at Information Radio. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. Cloudy day, but maybe no rain? There's going to be rain somewhere, but Winnipeg today actually should stay pretty dry. The forecast in just a moment for your Monday morning. Thanks for spending some time with us here. This half hour on the show, 1 year ago this month, June 15th. 17 people lost their lives while on their way to a casino near Carberry. Many of them were seniors from Dauphin and area. Now, this was one of the deadliest crashes in our history. After the 8 o'clock news headlines, we're going to hear from one of the survivors of the Carberry crash as they continue 1 year later to find out and figure out what life is going to look like in the aftermath with their injuries. So stay tuned in a special report this half hour. With reports on other stories, here now is Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, the trial of Jeremy Skibitsky resumes today. It's expected to hear from an expert who assessed the mental state of the admitted Winnipeg serial killer. Skibitsky has pleaded not guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder. It was Winnipeg's biggest Pride parade yet. More than 6,000 people part of yesterday's Pride, many joining in as those festivities went on. So all those people downtown walking through the streets. Now, the parade was blockaded briefly by a group of protesters. We'll tell you what went on coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Now, with the forecast, here's Abby Adeyemi.
Yeah, we've got about 113 in the city with the lingering fog patches dissipating across the southern parts of the province. We're looking at a mixed condition here. We should be seeing cloudy skies, a chance of drizzle this morning, followed by a blend of sunshine and clouds, giving way to a brighter afternoon, and then the winds will start from the north with a gentle pace, and then gradually becoming lighter as the day progresses. And our high for the day should be reaching a pleasant 23 degrees. As we move into the night, a few clouds will drift in, and then it's going to be more clouds expected overnight, and the temperatures are going to be dipping down to around 13 degrees. Looking ahead to tomorrow, Tuesday, anticipate another cloudy day. Then showers are forecasted to begin early in the morning and continued into the afternoon. We have a potential risk of a thunderstorm later in the afternoon tomorrow, and we should be seeing a high of 20. But right now in Winnipeg, it is 13 degrees. We're going to see a mix of sun and clouds, some drizzle, and we'll get to a high of 23.
My plants look like it's in my yard, look like it's the middle of August right now almost. Well, maybe not quite, but certainly later in July because there's been so much rain and they love it.
Yes, soaking up all the rain and all the moisture in the air.
Yeah, so at least it's doing the watering if you did get some plants in. But maybe you didn't even get it in between the raindrops. So there was certainly a lot of product at the garden centers over the weekend. All right, 8:13. Let's get into what's happening on your morning commute. Chloe Friesen's in for Corey.
Good morning. We got an update on westbound Roblin. So just past the Moray Bridge, we got a call from Lindsay that things were blocked off. It looks like there is actually hydro work being done there, so that's why it might be blocked off. Workers are up on the hydro pole, so that could be causing that. So that's westbound Roblin, just past the Moray Bridge. It is blocked off. Thank you for that update. Also heard from Dave that there is a new construction barricade at Chief Peguis, just at the Settlers Bridge. So if you're heading west, you are now losing a lane. That is in addition to eastbound, was already down to one lane. So slowing things down if you were traveling on Chief Peguis Trail. Thank you, Dave, for that call. Also got a call from Paul who says, Highway 5, it's extremely foggy. He's traveling between St. Rose and Dauphin, and he described the visibility as basically one hydro pole at a time. So if you are in that area on Highway 5, turn on those lights. Be very careful as you are commuting due to that fog. And if there is anything else that is getting in your way on your commute, or if you have any updates, we would love to hear from you on our commuter line at 204-788-3093.
Well, it was one of those moments where much of the province just stopped and leaned in to learn what happened. We are now approaching the anniversary of one of the deadliest crashes in Manitoba's history. June 15th will mark the one-year anniversary since a crash near Carberry, Manitoba left 17 people dead and 8 others injured, most of them seniors. The CBC's Alana Cole spent some time with one of the survivors and her 3 kids. The first people you're going to hear here are Josephine Stockatelny's children's voices, her son Don Stockatelny, and then we'll hear from her daughters, Mary Marzick and Linda Thompson.
My friend Steve walks in, and he said, quite the accident. And I said, pardon me? He said, well, there's an accident, number 5 and 1, near Carberry. Apparently, it was a bus from Dauphin. And I'm thinking, pardon me? He repeated that again, and then it hit me. And I said, I think my mom's on the bus.
So I called my sister, Linda, and I said, Linda, if you're driving, stop. There's something I have to tell you. HSC said, well, we do have a lady here, and we don't know who she is. And I said, well, may I ask if that person is alive? And they said, so far, this lady is alive.
Did you sing with them?
Yeah, of course.
Of course you did.
And my toe is just a tapping.
For Josephine Stockatelny's family, time together is precious. The 86-year-old was among the 25 people heading to a casino when the bus they were on collided with a semi-trailer near Carberry. She doesn't remember seeing what happened.
I guess I was thrown out through the window, or I don't know how, or that side of the bus got damaged.
The crash left 17 people dead, 8 others injured.
And I was very sorry about all these people that died. And that's why I keep their picture handy and pray for them.
This was that evening, watching the news.
Don Stockatelny couldn't help thinking the worst as bits of information about what happened started trickling out.
The lady from the bus company phoned me and said, there's at least 10 people that apparently didn't make it. And I remember, just with the age of my mom being 85, I remember saying to her, I don't think our odds are very good right now.
For hours, Josephine's kids, Dawn, Mary Marzick, and Linda Thompson, waited to find out if she was alive. Then came hope when Linda spoke with someone at Winnipeg's Health Sciences Centre.
They said, does she have any tattoos? And I said, no, my mom wouldn't have any tattoos, but she would have a gold chain and a cross. And with that information, they said, we think you should come here to HSC.
Josephine wasn't breathing on her own. She had a severe head injury, broken ribs, her pelvis was fractured. She had other injuries too. As doctors and nurses worked to help her heal, family slowly explained what she had lived through in small pieces every couple of days. Using whiteboards, giving her facts, Linda says they introduced the names of victims one person at a time.
The last person that we shared had passed away was the lady that she went on the trip with. She went on the trip with a girlfriend, and that was the name that we left for last.
She spent 2 months at HSC, getting stronger. Josephine was eventually transferred to hospital in Dauphin, but needed rehab. Her daughter Linda says 3 months at Deer Lodge prepared her for a new way of life. Josephine credits the staff there for helping her learn to walk again with the help of a walker.
That accident, that's when I got bad. In fact, I couldn't walk at all, thanks to Deer Lodge. They had a lot of exercises and a place, a room to do stretching, and got me walking. And I really appreciated that. That was such a surprise.
Josephine's life is different now. She's in assisted living in Dauphin instead of her own home. A brain injury leaves her with memory issues.
I can't sing like I used to. I used to be the choir director here in our Ukrainian Catholic Church in Dauphin, and I miss that very much. But there was a reason, I guess. I don't know why I'm alive, but anyway, I thank God that I still have my church and I have my family here, and I'm very thankful.
Linda says the family didn't know what Josephine's recovery would look like.
I think we are all pleasantly surprised at how amazing she's doing, and everybody's blown away. When you see my mom and she's happy and talking and enjoying life to the way she can now, it's a miracle.
RCMP has said dashcam videos showed the semi had the right of way. The investigation continues. Don still wonders what happened.
I question every day to myself, like what possibly could have happened. But in saying that, I knew the driver personally. We also know his family. And I'm a human being too. I make mistakes. And if he made a mistake, just total forgiveness from our family. It happens every day. It can happen to anybody.
The family wants to see safety improvements at that intersection. A year later, Mary says they feel for the others on the bus that day.
We just are so sorry for everybody who don't have the opportunity to be here like my mom is.
The family is grateful for all the help they've received on this journey. The moments, big or small, are ones they treasure. Alana Cole, CBC News, Dauphin.
A moving piece there put together from our colleague Alana Cole. Alana took a lot of pictures as she was visiting with the family to cover the story. You can see those along with the article on our website. I'll also mention that a monument on the anniversary of this crash, the 1 year coming up on June 15th, a monument honoring the victims will be unveiled at CN Park in Dauphin on that date, so just a couple of weeks from now. And of course, our website is cbc.ca/Manitoba.
In 2007, TV network CBS dropped 40 kids in the middle of the New Mexico desert as part of a brand new reality show. And if this sounds like Lord of the Flies to you, it was meant to.
We were going to prove to the world that we could make a better society than adults could.
I'm Josh Gwynn, and I want to know what this wild TV experiment was really about. Split Screen, Kid Nation, a 6-part podcast from CBC, available now.
It is 8:22 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube, and it is cloudy and 13 degrees in Winnipeg. The high 23, could feel a little bit humid out there, and the fog should, be gone by now from Winnipeg. But we are still getting calls, especially around the Dauphin area, about that extreme thick fog. So it could be a challenge if you're driving up there. Also, Gimli, Steinbach, Brandon, all still under this fog advisory that lifted for Winnipeg about an hour ago. Time is mentioned 8:22, and we have time just to slide in a little bit of music. June is National Indigenous History Month, so the teams over at CBC Music and Reclaimed have put together a list of up-and-coming Indigenous artists to watch for in 2024. So check it out, and you can put them on your own playlist, including this artist. This is Wyatt C. Lewis and Bobtail Road.
I won't let this fade now, but I'm racing time. Just to be with you while you're still around. I know we ain't afraid. Through all this breaking of the call, I find I would come back home. No matter what I lose in myself, I know where to find it. I wanna feel good, want you to feel good too. I've been loving in that new city, I've been planting down roots. I've been taking days off to spend those days with you. I wanna feel good, I wanna feel good, and you know that I'll be back soon. Let this be the last time we're not racing anymore. Met some friends down south of here, a real treat they are. All this soaking up the sun on the front porch when the air's just right. Give you this guitar, won't you sing me that song? I wanna feel good, want you to feel good too. I've been loving in that new city, I've been planting down roots. I've been taking days off to spend those days with you. I wanna feel good, I wanna feel good, and you know that I'll be back soon.
Music this morning from Wyatt C. Lewis. This tune's called Bobtail Road.
Bobtail Road, just take a ride across the tracks late at night.
I jumped the ending there. Sorry, guys. Bobtail Road, name of the tune. They are based on Treaty 7 territory, and they're on CBC Music's list of 8 Indigenous artists that we need to know in 2024. So to check out the rest of the list, head over to cbcmusic.ca, and you can, as we mentioned, download a whole bunch of music that's been curated for you for Indigenous History and Heritage Month. It's 8:27 a.m., and it's 13 in Winnipeg. It's cloudy. It's misty in Brandon. It's 10. It's 11 degrees now there. East at 22 are your winds. And in Thompson, it's misty as well, and it's 8 degrees currently. Well, Janet Stewart has popped in on our Monday morning to tell us what's coming up on the Call-In Conversation on Radio Noon. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So you're tackling workplace issues, you
We
brave
are.
soul.
We well,
Not
it's
our workplace.
no, because we
everyone's
have none.
workplace.
We work in Happy Land. It's very good here. It is good.
It is good
We
here.
are blessed.
But to be honest, every single workplace, every workplace has communication issues.
And that's often the root of the problem, right? You're just not communicating well because maybe you've got triggers, I've got triggers, there's stuff that just set us off. So we have a workplace wellness expert with us. Her name is Joyce Odidison, Joyce. She's coming to join us today for our workplace conversation, for our call-in conversation, which starts in this workplace at 12:35 today. And we're asking, what conflicts have you had with coworkers, with bosses? How did you solve them? Joyce has advice. If you're facing something, don't worry, we won't get you in trouble or anything like that. You can talk to our studio director if you're concerned about your anonymity or anything like that. You know what an idea is? You can call us right now, 204-788-3797. Leave a message. Let us know if you want us to play it or just paraphrase your words and get advice for you on how to smooth things out at your workplace, because so often it is something that's solvable if you know how to approach it correctly.
I actually, it's interesting, like some of the interactions over the many years, I always find that whenever I've sat down with someone, there's always sort of this moment of, oh, I thought you were either so mad at me or were not talking to me, or if they're in moments of conflict, or that you wouldn't want to sort of have that discussion with me. And then in moments I've had with different folks, just speaking personally, I would be like, no, let's talk about it. I didn't mean this. And then almost in 5 minutes, that moment of communication cleared up what could have gone unsaid. And when things go unsaid, you can build them up in your own head as well. And somehow in the workplace, and I don't know if COVID contributed to this because people weren't physically there around each other. So, you're also communicating by email, which can be taken out of doesn't always read the context that you want. There's so many ways for communication to go sort of sideways.
And then it builds and builds and builds. And you go home and you stew on it, and it ruins your evening or whatever. And it comes in and gets bigger than it needs to be.
So how do you get ahead of it? And what are the common reasons that this happens? And how do you sort of prevent those things from being an issue at your workplace? Good Monday morning conversation. Thank you, Janet.
You're very welcome.
So again, that place that you can leave a message for Janet for the calling conversation, if you can't make it live over noon to be part of it, is 788-3797. And then the calling conversation happens live between 12:30 and 1 o'clock. And as mentioned, you're going to be calling in and they're going to be talking to you before you go to air. So if you feel you want to share something, they'll help you out with how to share it, and maybe not give too much away if you're worried about publicly talking about your workplace. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Our workplace is CBC. Thanks for being with us, and your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it's cloudy. It's 13 degrees right now. We're expecting a mix of sun and clouds today and a high of 23. We are nearing the 1-year anniversary of one of the deadliest crashes in Manitoba history. It was June 15th last year when a collision on the Trans-Canada Highway near Carberry left 17 people dead. Josephine Stockatelny was severely injured. She spent 3 months in hospitals, then 3 months rehabilitating. Her son Don calls her recovery a miracle.
Getting her second chance, you obviously cherish it more, and then quite often you think, well, we get to do this, but there's 17 other families that don't anymore.
A monument honoring the victims of the crash will be unveiled in a Dauphin City Park on the anniversary of the crash. Josephine Stockatelny wants to be there. The trial of Jeremy Skibitsky resumes today. It is expected to hear from an expert who assessed the mental state of the admitted Winnipeg serial killer. Skibitsky has pleaded not guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder in the 2022 deaths of Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Contois, and an unidentified woman given the name Mushkode Bishake Ikwe Iban. Skibitsky's lawyers say while he has admitted to killing the women, they will argue he's not criminally responsible because of a mental disorder. The trial is expected to wrap up later this week. It was Winnipeg's biggest pride parade yet. I love your More than 6,000 people part of yesterday's pride parade, many more joining in alongside as the festivities went on. Una Park was there.
It's actually my first Pride. I've been kind of out for a while, but it's so exciting and I love it so much. It's a party of community and people who you just get along with and understand you on a fundamental level, but also just on the surface and having fun, I would say.
Park says it's important everyone could be out and proud of their identity. Pride Winnipeg President Barry Carlinzig says this was the biggest parade yet.
We've had an amazing turnout. We've had to expand. We've had to do different pieces for the parade.
The parade was blockaded briefly by a group of protesters. They had a handful of demands for Pride Winnipeg organizers, among them searching the landfills, divesting from so-called corporate pinkwashing, and removing police from Pride. Pride Winnipeg has committed to meeting with the protesters. The Starbucks in Osborne Village will not reopen. Last month, the company said it was temporarily closing to evaluate that store. The Osborne Village Biz said they were told it was closed because of safety concerns. Well, in a statement yesterday, a spokesperson for Starbucks says after careful evaluation, the store will remain closed. It says the review included whether the location provided a warm and welcoming environment. All staff have been offered the opportunity to transfer to other locations. A 51-year-old man who was reported missing in the rural municipality of Fisher on Saturday has been found dead. Fisher Branch RCMP say he was found yesterday afternoon. Police are treating his death as a homicide. A Winnipeg runner who has been trying to improve the lives of newborns is happy the province will start screening for a virus that can cause serious birth defects. Congenital cytomegalovirus, or CMV, is a viral infection that occurs during pregnancy. Rob Tétrault ran in yesterday's half marathon in St. Vital Park, hosted by CMV Canada. Premier Wab Kinew was also there, announcing $2 million for universal screening for the virus. That means all newborns born in Manitoba will be tested, and Tétrault is thrilled.
The Premier of our province decided this was an important enough cause to announce to my friends, to my family, to my wife, to my volunteers, to all my running buddies, that we would have universal screening for all newborn babies for CMV, the number one cause of infant disability.
Tétrault has been calling for universal screening since his son was born with congenital CMV in 2008. Well, get set for, I'm sorry to say it, a soggy June. Yesterday's rainfall dumped as much as 35 millimeters of rain in some parts of Winnipeg. Scott Kaler is president and chief scientist at WeatherLogics. He says there is a weather pattern developing where the jet stream is pulling unsettled weather into southern Manitoba, and that means rain and thunderstorms.
The next big chance will come through tomorrow with their chance of some significant rain and even thunderstorm activity. And then after that goes through, looks actually like a bit of a cool down later this week, but a bit drier. As I look in the longer range, though, I do see potential for more of these weather systems going through.
Kaler said this is going to continue to mid to late June, and then weather temperatures should finally start warming up. As far as summer is concerned, Kaler predicts average summer temperatures with no prolonged heat waves. You can find more news updated throughout your day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, Heather. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thanks. I know. We talked to him before. Talked to him earlier. Heather Wells and Megan Ketchison and Joni Nicolo in our news center. Thank you. Thanks to Brad Lillies and Kevin Nipatebo, new on the morning team behind the glass this morning, as well as Abby Adeyemi and Chloe Friesen, our hardworking team of associate producers, and our leaders in unit, Leif Larson, and show producers Nellie Gonzalez. Well, Chloe Friesen, what do we have to say about the commute?
Yeah, we're looking at Chief Peguis Trail. There's a construction zone from Main to Gateway. Both directions have lane closures for street construction until June 21st. Expect delays there. Use alternate routes if you can. As well, we heard from Mike, the water truck driver, at McGregor and Leela. If you're heading west on Leela, it's you're down to one lane. They're doing some road work there. As well, westbound Roblin could still be blocked just past the Moray Bridge due to some hydro work. Thank you to everyone who called the commuter line this morning.
Abby, you going to say much about the weather?
Fog patches have dissipated, so we're just looking for a day of sun and clouds.
All right, we'll take that after what Heather said about what's coming tomorrow. Thank you, guys, and thank you for listening to CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa.